Chapter 239. Before long, Su Zimo finished the juice of the demon beast egg. Not wanting to waste the essence energy in his body, Su Zimo closed his pores hurriedly and locked his 7 orifices. A warm current surged through his body and he felt as though he was about to explode. The body tempering section, tendons transformation section, bone strengthening section, marrow cleansing section and organs refinement section echoed in Su Zimo's mind. Su Zimo tried his best to calm that energy. A moment later, it was clear that the energy was much calmer and no longer rampaged through his body. Even so, Su Zimo did not dare to open his pores and unlock his 7 orifices rashly. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could vaguely sense that someone was sprinting over at an extremely fast speed with their clothes fluttering. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly as he turned back hurriedly. After the gray-robed cultivator entered the cave, he put away the earth spirit ruler. The cave was tall and wide and did not seem like it was created by humans. However, the interior was not complicated. As long as one walked along the cave, they would definitely reach the depths. After walking for a while, the gray-robed cultivator suddenly stopped in his tracks and frowned. Strange, why do I feel that something is amiss? The gray-robed cultivator murmured softly. As he continued forward, he opened his palm and his thumb made contact with his other 4 fingers as he began to deduce. A moment later, the gray-robed cultivator's expression changed starkly as he exclaimed softly, "Something happened? How could this be?" Gritting his teeth, the gray-robed cultivator hastened his footsteps and sprinted towards the depths of the cave. Could someone have beaten me to it and ruined my plans? Who could it be? That's impossible. There were only 2 people who passed through the primordial forest and sea of bones. Furthermore, that green-robed cultivator was bound by my demon-suppressing rope, and there's no way he could have broken free. What's the problem? The gray-robed cultivator's mind was in a mess as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. After turning a corner, his vision opened up. A gigantic egg entered his vision. The gray-robed cultivator's initially tensed heart finally calmed down and he heaved a sigh of relief, lamenting to himself, thankfully, I'm not too late. The egg is still here." However, the next moment, the gray-robed cultivator's heart skipped a beat once more. Beside the gigantic egg stood a green-robed cultivator. The green-robed cultivator seemed to have heard his footsteps and suddenly turned around. The clothes on his chest were open, revealing a pitch-black puppy head. The man and the beast both pursed their lips tightly, their expressions strange, as if they were holding their breaths. "It's you?" The gray-robed cultivator was stunned. For a moment, he still couldn't understand how the people who had been bound by the demon-binding rope at the foot of the mountain had arrived here first. "It's him?" Su Zimo was also stunned. Instantly, Su Zimo realized that the gray-robed cultivator's objective for this trip should be the demon beast egg beside him. Feeling a little guilty, Su Zimo could not help but avoid the gray-robed cultivator's gaze. The gray-robed cultivator's thoughts were all on the demon beast egg, and he did not notice Su Zimo's abnormality. As he walked forward, he said, "Fellow Taoist, I don't care how you broke free from the demon-binding rope. However, this egg has to be mine. Of course, given your cultivation, you won't be a match for me if you want to fight for this egg." The gray-robed cultivator was filled with confidence as he glanced sideways at Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not say anything and did not even dare to breathe. Right now, as long as Su Zimo opened his mouth to speak, auspicious colors would spew out with a divine radiance. By then, the gray-robed cultivator had already arrived before the demon beast egg. Sweeping his gaze across it, he frowned slightly and murmured, "Why is there a white spot on it that's even glowing?" His voice stopped abruptly. Suddenly, the gray-robed cultivator could not continue. His eyes were fixated on the small hole on the demon beast egg. His face was livid and his mouth twitched, as though he was on the verge of breaking down. Night Spirit was too young after all, and could not hold it in any longer as she opened her mouth and cried out. A rich essence aura flashed by. As though he sensed something, the gray-robed cultivator spun around. Seeing that he could not hide it any longer, Su Zimo could no longer hold it in and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Immediately after, multicolored light spewed out from Su Zimo's mouth and nose in a dazzling manner. When he saw that, There was no way the gray-robed cultivator did not know what was going on. Instantly, he was enraged and nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Zimo did not dare to stay on the spot and hurriedly used Divine Steed fleeting to speed out of the cave. F***ck, you're still trying to escape? The gray-robed cultivator's eyes were red as he hollered. Waving his arm, the gray-robed cultivator's sleeves expanded and reached first, circling Su Zimo a few times and pulling him back instantly. Hey, what are you doing? Su Zimo questioned fiercely. Unexpectedly, the moment he opened his mouth, another mouthful of multicolored light sprayed onto the gray-robed cultivator's face. F***ck. The gray-robed cultivator was so angry that he was trembling. Grabbing Su Zimo's collar, he gritted his teeth and said, "How dare you eat that egg? How dare you F***king eat it? What a waste of a heavenly treasure. Do you know what kind of living being is in that egg?" When Su Zimo saw that the person was in a berserk state, he was afraid that the latter would lose his mind and replied honestly, "I don't know." "You ate it just because you don't know?" Letting go of Su Zimo, the gray-robed cultivator wailed as though his parents had passed away. "Didn't I go through so much trouble to come all the way here just for that egg? But in the end you F***king ate it. I hate it." At that moment, the gray-robed cultivator even had the thought of dying. This Foundation establishment cultivator that popped out of nowhere had F***ed him badly. If the old man were to know about this, he would definitely be mocked to death. "Lad, just you wait for your death. How dare you eat that egg? Fufufu." The gray-robed cultivator looked at Su Zimo and sneered. Su Zimo did not say anything. The more the gray-robed cultivator thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. He closed in again and grit his teeth. "How much did you eat? You're spewing multicolored light from your mouth. How can you eat that much by yourself?" Right then, Night Spirit, who was initially hiding in Su Zimo's embrace, suddenly stuck its head out and burped. A few beams of golden light shot out from its nose and mouth as well. F***ck. The gray-robed cultivator rolled his eyes and felt dizzy, nearly fainting. That dog ate that much as well. Why wait? The gray-robed cultivator pointed at Su Zimo's face, so angry that he could not speak. Suddenly, as though he had thought of something, the gray-robed cultivator hurriedly ran to the egg and waved the folding fan in his hands, smashing the egg into several pieces. There was not much juice left in the egg and only a little was left on the eggshell. "I don't care, I'll try it too." The gray-robed cultivator mumbled and could not be bothered anymore. Holding a piece of the eggshell with both hands, he stuck out his tongue and licked it without caring about his image. Chapter 240. Following the guidance of the power of the blood curse, the palace lord arrived at the entrance of a cave halfway up the mountain. This cave entrance, raising his head to look at the gigantic cave entrance, a hint of fear flashed through the depths of the palace lord's eyes as he hesitated. That lad couldn't have really run inside, right? Frowning slightly, the palace lord's gaze flickered and he could not make up his mind for a moment. Given his status, he might not necessarily anger those terrifying living beings if he were to forcefully pass through the primordial forest and sea of bones. At most he could just reveal his identity at the end. However, if he were to step foot into this cave, he would definitely be killed. Just as the palace lord was hesitating, an extremely terrifying aura came from behind the godly mountain and a bone-chilling killing intent arrived. When he sensed that aura, the palace lord's expression changed. In the depths of the cave, the gray-robed cultivator licked every single eggshell no less than 3 times. The insides of the eggshells were so clean that they could even reflect one's reflection. They could be used as mirrors. Su Zimo was dumbfounded. Su Zimo lowered his head and glanced at Night Spirit, lamenting internally, even if Night Spirit were to lick it, he wouldn't be able to do it so cleanly. Is this man a dog? How could he have known that just the juice on the eggshells was enough to drive the gray-robed cultivator crazy? That energy was way too pure and rich without any impurities. If it was completely absorbed by the body, the changes it would cause to the body and soul were obvious. Gritting his teeth, the gray-robed cultivator glared at Su Zimo and Night Spirit at the side with resentment, getting angrier the more he thought about it. That man and beast had eaten so much that their bodies could no longer contain it. It was such a waste for them to spew out light the moment they opened their mouths. It was one thing for a man to eat it, But to think that he would feed it to a dog. Su Zimo, who was standing at the side, frowned as the uneasiness in his heart intensified. He had long wanted to leave this place, but the gray-robed cultivator had no intention of letting him leave. Helpless, Su Zimo could only wait and watch as the gray-robed cultivator licked the eggshell like a madman. Looking at how the gray-robed cultivator was about to lick it once more, Su Zimo could not hold it in any longer and asked probingly, "Fellow Taoist, why don't you bring these eggshells back and lick them later?" The gray-robed cultivator paused and his lips twitched as his eyes burned with rage. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Why the F asterisk CK did I leave my shell? It's all because of you and that black dog of yours. Without waiting for the gray-robed cultivator to get angry, Su Zimo reminded, "Indeed, I don't know what living being is in this egg. However, I do know that if we don't leave now, we'll definitely die." The gray-robed cultivator pursed his lips and licked his lips. The gray-robed cultivator looked askance at Su Zimo with a disdainful expression and waved his hand nonchalantly. "Correction, you're the one who's going to die." "I'm not going to die." Su Zimo frowned. The gray-robed cultivator seemed to have thought of something and said, "Right, correction. Even if you escape now, it's too late. Since you've already eaten this egg, the living beings here must have been alerted. Even if you escape, you won't be able to escape death. Don't forget you ate it too." Su Zimo pointed to the eggshell in the gray-robed cultivator's hands and sneered. "I don't believe that the living beings here will spare your life. Fufu." The gray-robed cultivator laughed and shook his head. "You don't have to worry about that. I have my own means to leave this place. You can just wait for your death here obediently." When he heard that, Su Zimo's mind started racing even though he was expressionless on the surface. Swoosh! Right then, an extremely terrifying aura descended and shrouded the surroundings of the godly mountain, surging in from the entrance of the cave. Roar! 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 Then, a loud and resounding roar came from the sky behind the sacred mountain. The roar was so fast that it almost arrived in front of them in an instant. Su Zimo had lived in Songlang Mountain Range for an entire year, and had seen countless demon beasts. However, he had never heard a roar as such. It was majestic and boundless, sweeping through the 9 heavens in all directions. This roar was filled with endless power and fury. Rumble! Boom! The entire godly mountain began to shake and cracks began to appear in the cave. Countless rocks rolled down and dust flew everywhere. This was a true landslide and earth-rending. Just the roar alone was enough to cause the godly mountain to crack and even show signs of collapsing. Against that terrifying roar, a blood mist burst forth from Su Zimo's body. The surface of his skin cracked and a series of blood scars appeared. It was a ghastly sight. Su Zimo grunted dully and his head felt like it was splitting apart as his face turned pale. The reverberating power of that roar was way too terrifying. Su Zimo's body was much stronger and tougher than most perfected Jindan's bodies. But now against that roar, Su Zimo's body was on the verge of collapsing. His tendons were ruptured and cracks appeared on his bones. Even his organs were dislocated from the shock. If it was before Su Zimo cultivated the organs refinement section, he would have turned into a blood mist instantly against that roar without a corpse. However, when Su Zimo's body was severely injured, the essence energy that was rampaging in his body fused into his flesh, tendons, bones, and organs. Initially, Su Zimo's body could not contain so much life essence energy. However, after this serious injury, the essence energy was indirectly sealed in Su Zimo's flesh. He could only wait for the future to refine the energy slowly. Night Spirit's situation was not much better. He was covered in blood from the shock of the roar and was on the verge of death. Even so, Night Spirit did not show any signs of fear. If Su Zimo were to observe carefully, he would have discovered that Night Spirit's gaze was extremely frightening right now. It was pitch black and exuded a faint killing intent. At the same time, a hazy gray fog rose around the gray-robed cultivator. There was an ancient aura within the fog, as though they had returned to the beginning of the world, to an era before chaos was formed. The gray-robed cultivator was the only god within. Jindan phenomenon. Although Su Zimo was not a perfected Jindan, he could tell the origin of the fog the moment he sensed the aura. Su Zimo had seen 2 Jindan phenomenons before. One was the ethereal sword rain of Spirit Peak's master, Wen Xian. The other was the bone-corroding black wind of a perfected Jin Dan from the mysterious faction. This fog phenomenon was the third one that Su Zimo had seen. Su Zimo could sense that the energy fluctuation of the gray-robed cultivator's Jin Dan phenomenon was clearly much stronger than the previous two. In fact, Su Zimo had a feeling that even if the previous two Jin Dan phenomenons were to join forces, they might not be able to defeat the gray-robed cultivator's Jin Dan phenomenon. The difference between them was obvious. So, that person is a perfected Jin Dan. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Using the spirit peering art to check the gray-robed cultivator's cultivation realm, it showed that he was at early-stage foundation establishment. That was not accurate at all. Against the roar of the powerful living being, the gray-robed cultivator frowned and was forced to release his Jin Dan phenomenon to defend against it. Chapter 241. The roar did not last for long before it disappeared. However, an even more terrifying aura shrouded the surroundings of the godly mountain. Boom! There was a deafening sound. It was as though a gigantic living being had descended on the peak of the mountain, causing it to shake and look as though it could collapse at any moment. It would be a fool's dream if he wanted to escape at this moment. Su Zimo looked at the gray-robed cultivator. He believed that even if the gray-robed cultivator was perfected Jin Dan, he would not be able to escape. Unhurriedly, the gray-robed cultivator pulled out a gray tattered cloth from his storage bag. In a flash, the gray-robed cultivator arrived at a corner and covered himself with the tattered cloth. Right in front of Su Zimo, the gray-robed cultivator vanished and even his aura dissipated, as though he had fused into the corner without a trace. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Su Zimo would not have believed it. It was as though the gray-robed cultivator had vanished into thin air. However, Su Zimo knew that the gray-robed cultivator was still here and hiding in that corner. Although the tattered cloth looked inconspicuous, it could conceal one's tracks and even aura without being discovered. That was the gray-robed cultivator's trump card. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo was the only one left in the depths of the cave. He was all alone with broken eggshells that were licked clean. Anyone who saw that would be able to guess the truth instantly. Su Zimo did not have much time to think. The powerful living being on the godly mountain could descend at any moment. In a flash, Su Zimo arrived at the corner where the gray-robed cultivator was hiding and stood at the side expressionlessly. The gray-robed cultivator who was hiding well was initially waiting to see Su Zimo make a fool of himself. But when he saw that, he was shocked. Although the treasure on his body could conceal his figure and his aura, it could not withstand the impact of power or defend against attacks. If the living being outside the godly mountain were to see everything in the cave, it would definitely lose its rationality and descend into rage. At that moment, if the living being were to release a destructive attack in Su Zimo's direction, he would definitely be implicated as well. Instantly, the gray-robed cultivator understood Su Zimo's intentions. What a scam! The gray-robed cultivator cursed inwardly. Even if he attacked Su Zimo now, it would be too late and he would expose himself. The gray-robed cultivator wanted nothing more than to send Su Zimo flying with a kick. However, he had no choice but to unfold the rag and pull Su Zimo in as well. Their figures and auras disappeared in an instant. As soon as this action was completed, a loud rumbling sound rang out as the divine mountain was struck by a huge force. The peak of the mountain was sent flying, and the cave was completely exposed. The moment the Blood Crow Palace's lord sensed the descent of that terrifying aura, he realized that it was already too late for him to leave, and would only cause misunderstandings. Fortunately, he didn't enter the cave, so he wouldn't become enemies with the creatures here. Moreover, according to the guidance of the blood curse, Su Zimo was hiding in this cave. By the time the living being of the primordial ruin arrived, that lad would have nowhere to run and would definitely die if he was trapped in this cave. If everything went smoothly, the other party should not make things difficult for him after he revealed his identity. He would also be able to leave this place unscathed, and this trip would be more daunting than dangerous. Roar! 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 Just as the Blood Crow Palace's lord had expected, a series of powerful roars followed right after the terrifying aura, piercing through the clouds and shattering rocks. A few breaths later, the primordial living being had descended on the divine mountain. Even though he was mentally prepared, The Blood Crow Palace's lord's pupils still constricted and his heart thumped furiously when he caught sight of the primordial living being with his own eyes. The primordial living being did not reveal its full appearance. However, it was only half of its body that was hovering above the divine mountain, almost covering the entire divine mountain that towered into the clouds. The massive and thick body coiled around the divine mountain once. It was a few thousand feet long and was filled with green scales that shone with a cold glint. Clang! Clang! A pair of huge claws protruded from the bottom of the body. Their bones protruded out and they were extremely sharp. They dug into the sacred mountain and instantly pierced through it. The horns on the primordial living being's head were prominent. Looking down from above, it glared with a pair of eyes that emitted a cold glint filled with killing intent. The primordial living being had whiskers beneath its chin and opened its mouth wide, revealing terrifying sharp teeth. Sticky saliva dripped from the sides of its mouth as it looked menacing. Dragon! That was a true dragon. The Blood Crow Palace's lord had once seen the form of a dragon in some of the ancient books in his clan. However, he was still extremely shocked now that he was seeing it for himself. The descriptions in the ancient books could not even compare to a 10,000th of what he was seeing with his own eyes. At most, the appearance in the ancient books was similar. However, the unique might and aura of dragons was not something that could be described with mere words. If Su Zimo could see that divine dragon right now, he would definitely recall something. Back before they entered the primordial ruin, the gray-robed cultivator had once said in a serious manner, "I've even seen a true dragon. Even though it's just a small portion of its claws, it's still shocking enough. That single scale is larger than our bodies and those claws are even longer and sharper than our flying swords." Back then, nobody took those words seriously. However, upon closer inspection, the appearance of the divine dragon was even better than what the gray-robed cultivator had described. The divine dragon did not use much strength and instantly, half of the divine mountain was sent flying. Everything in the depths of the cave was exposed to the divine dragon. The moment the Blood Crow Palace's lord took a look, his face turned pale and blood drained. There was no one. The depths of the cave were in a mess. A gigantic dragon egg was smashed into pieces and the juice within was gone. Even the eggshell was licked clean. However, there was no one. To be precise, there was someone else. A dragon egg was eaten by someone. Apart from the divine dragon that had just arrived, he was the only one left at the scene. There was no way he could explain himself. The Blood Crow Palace's lord was stunned. This was completely different from what he had expected. When the divine dragon caught sight of the eggshell scattered on the ground, its eyes surged with endless killing intent and rage that was about to spew out. Suddenly, the Blood Crow Palace's lord felt a chilling killing intent surge towards him. "No, it's not me." The Blood Crow Palace's lord was completely flustered. Although he was at the Void Reversion realm and could be called a Void Reversion Dao being with almost no opponents in the Great Zhou dynasty, he was still doomed against an adult dragon. The gray-robed cultivator who was hiding in the corner was stunned as well. Why was there another person here? This person is quite skilled and is a professional scapegoat. To think that he would rush over at this moment. What an accurate timing. The gray-robed cultivator muttered internally. Su Zimo and the other man hid in the corner motionlessly, not daring to lift the rag to check out the situation outside. However, when he heard the commotion outside, Su Zimo had a rough idea of what was going on. Just now, the person who was speaking should be the one chasing after him. Su Zimo wanted to lift the rag to check out the person's appearance and see what this primordial living being was. However, he maintained his rationality and held himself back. At this moment, any slight movement could expose the both of them. Chapter 242. Swoosh! The divine dragon spat out a breath in the direction of the Blood Crow Palace lord, and a pale green mist gushed out from the dragon's huge mouth. Instantly, the surrounding air burned up. The green mist streaked through the void, distorting the surrounding space and distorting light. Dragon flames! The palace lord's expression changed as he exclaimed. Dragon flames was an innate ability unique to dragons. After every dragon was born and matured to a certain stage, they would naturally grasp this ability. Furthermore, as they grew older and their cultivation deepened, the power of their dragon flames would increase as well, even reaching a level where they could incinerate the heavens and boil the seas. That was the divine power of the legends. Even though the dragon flame before him was far from the level of a divine ability, it was not something that the palace lord of Blood Crow Palace could withstand. Slapping his storage bag, the palace lord took out a talisman and crushed it on the spot. Immediately after, the palace lord drew out a blood-colored bone staff. There was a skull embedded at the top of the staff and it gave off a sinister aura. Blood pattern curse. Waving the bone staff, the palace lord shot out 2 beams of blood light from the eye sockets of the skull at the top of the staff. As though it was alive, the skull opened its mouth and spat out a green beam of light. The blood and green light fused, forming a drop of fresh blood. The blood suddenly exploded, and a series of ripples appeared in the void, colliding with the oncoming dragon flames. Poof! 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 The 2 completely different powers met, collided, corroded and fought in midair, letting out a series of noises as 3 different colors of light burst forth in a bedazzling manner. Although Su Zimo and Su Zimo, who were hiding in a corner of the cave, could not see what was happening outside, they could clearly sense the terrifying fluctuations of the power. Even perfected being Jean Dan's gray-robed cultivator would die on the spot if he was caught in the aftershock of the fight between the 2 powerful existences, let alone Su Zimo. Su Zimo and Su Zimo's expressions were terrible as they held their breaths, not daring to make a single sound. The power of the dragon flames was clearly superior to the blood pattern curse. The 2 forces were in a stalemate for a moment before the dragon flames incinerated the blood patterns one by one and instantly descended before the palace lord of Blood Crow Palace. The Blood Crow Palace lord had already crushed a talisman, forming a defensive barrier around him. Crack! 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 After all, this was the highest grade defensive talisman amongst grade 5 talismans. However, it was still unable to withstand the corrosion of the dragon flames. Soon, cracks appeared on its surface, and it looked like it would collapse at any moment. Of course, after experiencing the continuous weakening of the blood mark curse and the grade 5 talisman, the might of this dragon flame had decreased sharply. Disperse! The palace lord of Blood Crow Palace waved his blood-colored bone staff once more as his eyes flickered with a green glow. Bang! After the Blood Crow Palace's lord attacked 3 times consecutively, the dragon flames finally dissipated into thin air. At that moment, the divine dragon soared into the sky and its massive body was fully extended. Exposed before the palace lord, it exuded a shuddering aura. The appearance of the divine dragon changed the weather. The palace lord's resistance caused the divine dragon to be even more enraged. Fellow Taoist dragons were both from the 9 races. I've intruded upon a treasure ground by mistake. Please show mercy. The palace lord's face was pale as he shouted hurriedly. When he heard that, Su Zimo, who was hiding in the corner, felt his heart skip a beat. Dragons! Could the primordial living being outside be dragons? Could dragons truly exist in this world? At that moment, Su Zimo had an urge to lift the rag and take a look at the appearance of the dragons. However, Su Zimo resisted the urge. When he was studying in Pingyang Town, he had heard many legends about dragons. Those legends were illusory and without any basis. They were merely myths that were passed down among the commoners. Su Zimo had never taken them seriously. In fact, before he met perfected being Song Lang, he did not believe that there were immortals in this world. Later on, Su Zimo embarked on the path of cultivation and was able to enter Misty Peak. In Misty Peak, Su Zimo had read some ancient books. There were almost no records of dragons in those books. Even if there were, they were extremely vague and limited. Piecing together the ancient books, one could obtain some limited information. Dragons were extremely terrifying living beings of the primordial era. They did not belong to the demon race and were a unique race known as dragons. According to legends, dragons were extremely strong and were incomparably glorious in the primordial era, reigning over the ages. However, for some unknown reason, dragons were destroyed in the long river of time and had long gone extinct, turning into legends. Su Zimo was still skeptical towards those records. In his opinion, since dragons once had such a dazzling and glorious civilization, they must have left some traces of their existence in Tianhuang mainland. Prior to this, Su Zimo had never seen one before. Until earlier on, Su Zimo's mind suddenly recalled the gigantic skeleton he caught a glimpse of in the sea of bones that seemed to stretch through the entire sea of bones. Could that be a dragon skeleton? When he thought of that possibility, Su Zimo was shocked. Frowning, Su Zimo recalled what just now said, and another question flashed through his mind. 9 races? What's the 9 races that he's talking about? On the other side, when the gray-robed cultivator heard that, a glint flashed through his eyes before disappearing instantly. He's someone from the 9 races? Blood pattern curse, could it be? The gray-robed cultivator's gaze flickered as he guessed the identity of the Blood Crow Palace's lord. So what if he's someone from the 9 races? Even if you're a pure-blooded bastard with an impure bloodline, you'll definitely die if you dare to come here and eat the descendants of dragons. Suddenly, a deep and powerful voice sounded from the void. Every single word was like a thunderclap that shook one's mind. Swoosh! The divine dragon swung its tail. The dragon tail that was filled with green scales was like a thick divine whip that slammed towards the Blood Crow Palace's lord with an apocalyptic might. Ah! The Blood Crow Palace's lord was shocked as he exclaimed. Before the dragon tail arrived, a suffocating aura of death had already surged over. Biting his tongue gently, the Blood Crow Palace's lord spat out a mouthful of essence blood. After spitting out that mouthful of essence blood, the Blood Crow Palace's lord seemed to have weakened significantly as his eyes dimmed and he looked dispirited. Even if he could survive the divine dragon's tail after spitting out that mouthful of essence blood, he would have to recuperate for dozens of years before he could recover fully. Go! The Blood Crow Palace's lord chanted a series of obscure incantations as he waved his blood-colored bone staff and pointed forward. The blood light transformed into a gigantic skeleton that bit towards the dragon tail. At the same time, the Blood Crow Palace's lord took out a bunch of talismans from his storage bag and crushed them all. A pained expression appeared in the Blood Crow Palace's lord's eyes. He had collected those talismans for many years, and had not expected that he would have to use them all in a single round. He was truly aggrieved in this battle. Initially, he was just chasing after a mere Foundation establishment cultivator without any suspense. However, for some unknown reason, he was completely passive throughout the entire process and did not even manage to touch the sleeves of his opponent. It was as though he was led by the nose. For some reason he ended up here and even got targeted by a divine dragon. Chapter 243. Boom! The dragon's tail slammed heavily against the skull that was condensed, letting out a deafening bang in midair. Almost instantly, the skull was shattered by the dragon's tail and scattered into the world. Swoosh! The dragon's tail did not stop there as it whipped the palace lord viciously once more. Bang! 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 Even with the many talismans stacked together, they could not defend against the ferocity of the divine dragon's tail whip. The palace lord's glabella shone brightly as he released an incomparably strong spirit consciousness to defend against it with all his might. Bang! Like a kite with a broken string, the palace lord was sent flying instantly, falling from the waist of the mountain before crashing heavily onto the ground, stirring up a layer of dust. Exclamation point! The palace lord spat out a mouthful of blood and the blood drained from his face. His gaze was dim and many of his bones were fractured while his organs were ruptured. If he had not fought with all his might at the end, that tail whip would have turned him into a blood mist. The difference was way too great. They were not on the same level at all. It's true it wasn't me. I just arrived and didn't enter at all. The palace lord endured the intense pain all over his body and gasped with a trembling voice. Who else could it be if it wasn't you? The divine dragon coiled in midair and looked down at the palace lord, questioning loudly. Its eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Blood Crow Palace's lord took a deep breath of air. Fellow Taoist of the dragon race, please listen to me. Initially, I came here in pursuit of someone. He must be the one who ate your descendant. He's the true culprit. I believe that he must have used some sort of camouflage to be here. He must not have gone far. When they heard that, Su Zimo and the gray-robed cultivator who were hiding in the corner felt their hearts skip a beat. They were so scared that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. The gray-robed cultivator knew that things were bad. While his tattered cloth did have the ability to camouflage, it was a little opportunistic. Be it the fact that the dragon egg was stolen or eaten, the divine dragon would definitely go berserk and lose its rationality after receiving such a blow. The first thing it would do was to search for the culprit. With the tattered cloth to hide their bodies and auras, it was easy for them to escape. Furthermore, the divine dragon would not have expected them to hide in the cave instead of leaving right away. This was a psychological blind spot. However, the gray-robed cultivator had not expected that Blood Crow Palace's lord would appear out of nowhere in the already chaotic situation. This person had chased Suzimo all the way here. Relying on the blood curse power, he had deduced that Suzimo was in this cave. That was the reason why the palace lord of Blood Crow Palace said that if the dragons were to turn around and search the cave carefully, the tattered cloth on the gray-robed cultivator's body would be nothing more than a decoration. It would be easy for this rag to escape the detection of Jinren Jindan or even Jining Jinjuan. However, trying to hide from the detection of an adult dragon was nothing more than a pipe dream. After the Blood Crow Palace's lord finished his words, the outside suddenly fell into silence. The atmosphere became extremely strange. The world seemed to have come to a standstill. A look of determination flashed through the gray-robed cultivator's eyes as he reached for his storage bag and put away the rag. At this time, if he wanted to continue hiding, he would only be deceiving himself. A talisman appeared in the gray-robed cultivator's palm. Lesser Transference Talisman. This was a type of talisman from the ancient era that had been lost by now. Even in the ancient era, the Lesser Transference Talisman was extremely rare and was extremely famous. Shredding the Lesser Transference Talisman could teleport a person thousands of miles away instantly. Although the landing point was uncertain, this kind of ability was enough to make every cultivator's heart beat faster. That was because it meant that cultivators with the Lesser Transference Talisman could escape from danger instantly and escape with their lives. The value of the Lesser Transference Talisman was self-evident. Every time one was used, there would be one less. For the current cultivation world, the Lesser Transference Talisman was priceless and could not be bought no matter how many spirit stones one spent. To be fair, the gray-robed cultivator's original plan did not involve the use of the Lesser Transference Talisman at all. However, the situation was pressing and he would lose his life if he did not use it now. The moment the gray-robed cultivator put away the rag, the two of them were exposed and stood in the deepest corner of the cave. Blood Crow Palace's lord blinked his green eyes and caught sight of Suzimo for the first time. As for Suzimo, this was also the first time he caught sight of this person who was chasing after him. Although it was a short time, both of them remembered each other immediately. The next moment, Suzimo caught sight of the primordial life form that was hovering in midair. Pust! Suzimo's heart skipped a beat and his pupils constricted as he gasped. It was way too shocking. If he had not witnessed it personally, Suzimo would not have imagined that a life form could grow to such an extent and exude such a terrifying might and aura. In front of this primordial life form, Suzimo actually felt a sense of insignificance and had the urge to prostrate in worship. It was as though the other party was incomparably noble and supreme. That thought suddenly surged into his mind, as though it came from the depths of his bloodline and was deeply rooted. Suzimo frowned. He was extremely disgusted by that feeling. Unless Suzimo was willing to do so, he would not bend his knees to anyone, nor would he bend his spine. Suzimo narrowed his eyes with a burning gaze. Against the might of the divine dragon, he puffed out his chest with a hint of killing intent and sharpness in his brows. The moment that feeling of inferiority surged, Suzimo extinguished it. The change in Suzimo's body was extremely brief and happened almost instantly. However, the gray-robed cultivator still noticed it. The gray-robed cultivator looked deeply at Suzimo. For the first time, he felt that this green-robed cultivator was not simple. He was the only one who knew how difficult it was to break free from the might and aura of the dragons. Not only did it require an indestructible will, it also required a confidence that bordered on arrogance and a domineering aura that looked down on the world. There might be some cultivators who could fulfill one of those conditions. However, there were only a handful of people who fulfilled all three conditions. Suzimo before him was one of them. If Suzimo had already impressed the gray-robed cultivator, the black and ugly puppy in Suzimo's embrace was even more unbelievable. How is that possible? The gray-robed cultivator's eyes were filled with disbelief. There was no fear in the night spirit's eyes at all against the divine dragon that was circling in the skies with divine light and towering horns. The night spirit hid most of its body in Su Zimo's embrace and only revealed a pair of pitch-black eyes. It had a calm expression as it glared at the divine dragon in midair coldly. The night spirit's gaze was a little strange and gave the gray-robed cultivator an indescribable feeling. The gray-robed cultivator remembered that gaze the entire time. Many years later, when the gray-robed cultivator found out about the origins of the night spirit, he recalled that gaze and came to a realization. Chapter 244. The gray-robed cultivator had always harbored a huge grudge against Su Zimo. If not for this person, he would have stolen the dragon egg a long time ago and escaped unscathed. How glorious would that be for a divine dragon to be born in the future? But now, not only was the dragon egg gone, even his most precious and rare treasure, the minor transference talisman, was used. I've suffered a huge loss this time round. The gray-robed cultivator cursed internally. After crushing the minor transference talisman, his first reaction was to send Su Zimo flying with a kick. He was filled with hatred. If not for that green-robed cultivator, would he have ended up in such a state? However, when the gray-robed cultivator sensed the changes just now in Su Zimo's body and the night spirit's gaze, he changed his mind at the last minute. He decided to take the green-robed cultivator and the black dog away. That's the minor transference talisman? Blood Crow Palace's lord focused his gaze and instantly recognized the origin of the talisman. The minor transference talisman shattered. An extremely strange energy fluctuation burst forth from the gray-robed cultivator's palm. The entire space trembled violently. Immediately after, a gigantic vortex appeared behind the gray-robed cultivator. Its center was dark and deep, resembling a black hole. A powerful suction force acted on the gray-robed cultivator. Before he was pulled into the black hole, the gray-robed cultivator reached out and grabbed Su Zimo's arm, pulling him in as well. Although the entire process seemed slow on the surface, it happened in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! Both of them were devoured by the black hole and vanished from where they were. Almost at the same time, the divine dragon that was initially in midair turned into a gigantic green beam of light and descended on the waist of the mountain, causing the entire godly mountain to crumble on the spot. Although the divine dragon's speed was fast, it was still a step too slow. Roar! The divine dragon was enraged and opened its gigantic mouth. Saliva dripped down and it let out a resounding dragon roar that reverberated through the world. Around the divine dragon's head, the sound seemed corporeal and condensed into ripples that spread in all directions, sweeping through the entire primordial ruin. Countless corpses in the sea of bones were so shocked that they jumped. Many strange skeletal beasts seemed to have been summoned, and all of them woke up. Even the bone dragon that pierced through the sea of bones was shaking its enormous body, wanting to soar into the sky. Just as the dragon's roar fell, another dragon's roar faintly came from a valley surrounded by a huge mountain range behind the sacred mountain. The dragon roar that came from the valley was neither loud nor resounding. However, it was filled with the richness of time, dignified and majestic. The palace lord grunted and his expression turned even uglier. The dragon roar that came from the valley was faintly discernible, but it almost shattered his essence spirit. The numerous ferocious beasts made of white bones that had just formed in the sea of bones collapsed in an instant, shattering into numerous bone fragments that scattered all over the ground. The two dragon roars intertwined in the void, as if they were communicating something. The divine dragon in the sky above the divine mountain was extremely furious and roared crazily. The dragon's roar in the valley seemed to want to stop it. The dispute between the two sides became more and more intense. In the end, the divine dragon let out a final roar and turned into a ray of green light. It disappeared from the sky above the divine mountain and sped away from the sea of bones. There were many cultivators standing outside the primordial forest, pacing back and forth. Those cultivators were extremely cautious and did not dare to enter the primordial forest rashly. However, they were indignant to leave just like that. Before long, a loud roar sounded from the direction of the primordial ruin. A small number of cultivators frowned and sensed that something was amiss. A look of fear flashed through their eyes as they turned and left the place. However, most of the cultivators were excited and discussed fervently. They soared into the air and peered into the ruins repeatedly. That sound is so strange. I wonder what kind of ferocious beast it is? Judging from the sound, that ferocious beast isn't weak. It must be a ferocious beast from the primordial era, and might have already gone extinct in Tianhuang mainland. Humph, if that ferocious beast dares to appear, I'll definitely take it down and sign a blood oath with it. Before long, a massive divine dragon with horns and a towering body crossed the sea of bones and the primordial forest. It arrived in midair aggressively and looked down at the vast land from above, emitting a terrifying might and aura as its eyes were filled with killing intent. Everyone was shocked. The cultivators who were initially in midair felt their limbs go cold and fell to the ground one after another. Thump! Thump! The cultivators who were standing on the spot knelt down one after another. Thousands of cultivators shuddered under the shroud of the vast dragon might. Their faces were pale and they kept quiet out of fear. Just now, the cultivator who said that he wanted to take down the ferocious beast was so scared that he peed and shit himself as he knelt on the ground and kowtowed with all his might. Roar! The divine dragon reared its head and roared. Poof! 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 Outside the primordial forest, thousands of cultivators exploded one after another, turning into meat paste and blood mists. They died on the spot. Just now, some of the cultivators who left were scared silly when they saw that from afar. It was way too tragic. Thousands of cultivators, including perfected Jean Dan, could not even withstand the roar of the divine dragon. In the blink of an eye, the area outside the primordial forest turned into a Shura hell with corpses and rivers of blood. The divine dragon hated those cultivators to the core. In its eyes, those people were no different from the two who escaped earlier on. The divine dragon sensed carefully once more before rising into the air. Soaring into the 9 heavens with a murderous aura, it sped into the distance and disappeared from the skies above the primordial ruin before long. It was only at this moment that the palace lord heaved a sigh of relief. He survived? Lying on the ground, the palace lord felt surreal and was in a daze. Thankfully, the divine dragon escaped in the end, or he would have died for sure. Standing up with great difficulty, the palace lord leaned on his blood-colored bone staff and dragged his severely injured body through the sea of bones, returning to the primordial forest. Master! The Blood Crow King had been waiting here for a long time. When he caught sight of the palace lord's tragic state, his expression changed as he hurried forward to support the latter. How did this happen? The Blood Crow King was stunned. Gritting his teeth, the palace lord's eyes were filled with endless hatred, and he was so angry that he was trembling. It was only at this moment that he gradually regained his senses. Right from the start of this pursuit, he had already fallen into Su Zimo's trap. In the end, not only did he not manage to kill the lad personally, he even nearly lost his life. It was a complete failure. His injuries were extremely severe, and he would most likely need dozens of years of recuperation before he could recover to his original state. Su Zimo fufufu. You have to live on well and don't let anything happen to you. The moment I return will be the moment you die. The palace lord's expression was grim as he let out a series of laughter with a vicious gaze. The Blood Crow King stood at the side, not daring to make a sound. A long time later, the palace lord took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Let's go back to Black Crow Mountain. Master, your injuries are too severe. It'll be difficult for us to pass through this primordial forest. Get your clansmen here. Even if those blood crows die here, you have to pave a path for me." After a moment of silence, the Blood Crow King nodded. Understood. Chapter 245. Suddenly, a gigantic black hole appeared in the void thousands of kilometers away from the primordial ruin. 2 figures fell out of it and landed heavily on the ground, causing dust to fly everywhere. Su Zimo's physique was strong and he did not feel anything. Ouch! However, the gray-robed cultivator cried out in pain. Although he was a perfected being Jean Dan, his physique was not as strong as Su Zimo's. At that moment he was grimacing and gasping from the fall. Surveying his surroundings, Su Zimo realized that they had already left the primordial ruin and arrived at a completely foreign place. Minor transference talisman. Su Zimo's gaze flickered as he murmured softly. He knew nothing about talismans and this was the first time he had heard of the name of the talisman. However, The ability displayed by the minor transference talisman was an eye-opener for Su Zimo. Spatial teleportation. In Tianhuang mainland, most cultivators would have to set up teleportation formations in advance if they wanted to teleport. The higher the level of the teleportation formation, the further the distance it could teleport. Su Zimo had never thought that a seemingly simple talisman would be able to activate spatial teleportation. To be fair, if he did not have the minor transference talisman in that environment, it would have been impossible for him and the gray-robed cultivator to escape. In Su Zimo's mind, he recalled that fleeting glimpse before he left the primordial ruin. Its massive slender body was covered in green scales that looked like they were made of molten steel. Its head was menacing and its claws were sharp. Every single part of its body was filled with explosive power. That resounding roar that could pierce through metal and stone could probably only be described as a dragon's roar. Was that really a dragon? Su Zimo looked at the gray-robed cultivator and could not help but ask. Everything that he had experienced today had completely exceeded Su Zimo's understanding of this world. The cultivation world in Tianhuang mainland. Even at this moment, Su Zimo could not believe that a living dragon had appeared before him. Furthermore, he was nearly killed by that dragon. When he heard Su Zimo's question, the gray-robed cultivator rolled his eyes and sneered. What else did you think it was? It really was a dragon. In the distant past, there was an incomparably powerful race called the dragons. Then Su Zimo thought of something. Since that green creature was a dragon, then the huge egg in the depths of the cave was a dragon egg. I actually ate a dragon. Su Zimo was shocked. Or more accurately, half of it. The other half was eaten by Night Spirit. The more the gray-robed cultivator thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. When he heard Su Zimo mumbling to himself at the side, he was even more enraged and could not help but stand up. Leaning forward, he glared at Su Zimo and gritted his teeth. You know that you ate a dragon too? Of all things to eat, why did you choose to eat dragon eggs? If you don't eat that egg and I steal it, it will definitely give birth to a divine dragon. Now I haven't gotten anything. Before Su Zimo could react, Night Spirit, who was hiding in his embrace, suddenly extended its sharp claws with a cold gaze. It was as though it would attack without hesitation if the gray-robed cultivator made any strange movements. The moment Night Spirit extended its claws, the gray-robed cultivator felt a chill run down his spine. Sensing it, the gray-robed cultivator lowered his head and glared at Night Spirit, hollering, "Why? Black Dog, are you trying to bite me? Look at how arrogant you are." Looking at Night Spirit's claws, the gray-robed cultivator narrowed his eyes and exclaimed softly. The thickness of Night Spirit's claws was almost the same as the hole on the dragon egg. "Great!" Enlightened, the gray-robed cultivator said. "After all this time, you were the one who attacked first, Black Dog." When Night Spirit saw that the gray-robed cultivator was in a frenzy and did not seem hostile, it ignored him and continued sprawling in Su Zimo's embrace with its eyes half closed. The gray-robed cultivator's gaze lingered on Night Spirit and he fell into deep thought. Initially, the gray-robed cultivator thought that Night Spirit was just a dog. He even mocked Su Zimo for rearing a mutt as his spirit beast. However, from the looks of it, Night Spirit was not as simple as it seemed. Even ancient remnant beasts or pure-blooded ferocious beasts might not dare to eat a dragon egg, let alone a mutt. However, no matter how the gray-robed cultivator thought about it, he could not think of any demon beast that could match up to Night Spirit. Rubbing his chin, the gray-robed cultivator rolled his eyes and a thought crossed his mind. Right then, Su Zimo asked from the side, "I'm Su Zimo from Misty Peak. Fellow Taoist, may I know your name?" Lin Xuanji. Most of the gray-robed cultivator's attention was on Night Spirit, and he did not think much before replying. Su Zimo nodded and cupped his fists solemnly. "Thank you for saving me this time round, fellow Taoist. If there's a chance, I'll definitely repay you in the future." "There's no need for the future. Right now will do." Lin Xuanji smiled and pointed to Night Spirit in Su Zimo's embrace. "Fellow Taoist, how about giving me that mutt of yours as a form of repayment?" Even though Lin Xuanji could not tell the origin of Night Spirit, he could tell that this little thing had immense potential. Even if it was a true mutt, it would be able to transform into a ferocious and terrifying spirit beast after eating half of the dragon egg. Lin Xuanji could vaguely sense that if he could take Night Spirit away, He would definitely be able to make up for his losses this time round. Night Spirit? Su Zimo froze for a moment. He had not expected that Lin Xuanji would target Night Spirit. Su Zimo smiled. It's not a problem if I agree. However, there's no way Night Spirit will leave with you. Lin Xuanji chuckled strangely and asked, does that mean you agree? If you agree, we'll be even and we won't owe each other anything. How about that? Sure. Su Zimo nodded and snickered internally. He knew Night Spirit's temperament the best. The gray-robed cultivator would definitely be at a disadvantage if he dared to target it. Great. Lin Xuanji patted Su Zimo on the shoulder and said, as long as you agree, leave the rest to me. I'll show you what I'm capable of. Su Zimo smiled without saying anything. Lin Xuanji came before Night Spirit and asked with a grin, little black dog, want to come with me? Night Spirit ignored him and closed its eyes, as though it had fallen asleep. Lin Xuanji raised the folding fan in his hands and tapped Night Spirit on the head, chiding softly, you sure know how to act, little fella. Just as the folding fan was about to land on Night Spirit's head, Night Spirit suddenly woke up. Night Spirit raised its head and bit down on Lin Xuanji's folding fan, letting out a threatening growl from the depths of its throat. Hey! Lin Xuanji panicked and retracted his folding fan hurriedly. Night Spirit bit down hard and refused to let go. Don't! Lin Xuanji flapped the folding fan in his hands so wildly that his arm was almost dislocated before he managed to fling Night Spirit away. Su Zimo swept his gaze across Lin Xuanji's folding fan without batting an eyelid. That folding fan was a treasure. Given Night Spirit's bite strength, it could even snap the demon suppressing rope. However, it did not leave a single mark on the folding fan. Chapter 246. You rabid dog. Lin Xuanji nearly broke out in cold sweat. Although this little thing did not look big and seemed like it had just been born, it was strong and nearly yanked the folding fan away from his hands. The folding fan in Lin Xuanji's hands had a powerful background and was a symbol of his lineage. If he lost it, he might not be able to keep his life. Furthermore, he could not afford to embarrass himself like that. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he was. What if Night Spirit snatched the folding fan away? What was he going to tell the old man? He was going to say that the folding fan was lost and taken away by a dog. The old man would definitely whip him to death. At that thought, Lin Xuanji glared at Night Spirit angrily. Naturally, Night Spirit was fearless and returned the glare. The man and beast glared at each other. After a moment, Lin Xuanji finally gave in and revealed a friendly smile. Rabid dog, cough cough. Night Spirit, what do you think this is? With that, he withdrew a small bottle from his storage bag and removed the cork. Instantly, a rich medicinal fragrance wafted out. There was even a faint smell of blood mixed within the medicinal fragrance. Blood-flesh elixir. The blood-flesh elixir was created by refining the essence of a demon beast's flesh and supplemented with many spirit herbs. It was the favorite of demon beasts. The grade of the blood-flesh elixir depended on the grade of the demon beast it was refined with. The blood-flesh elixir before him was not of a low grade. It could be a grade 2 or even grade 3 elixir. Although Su Zimo had dabbled in elixir refinement, to be fair, he could only refine grade 1 elixirs. Furthermore, ever since the Five Peaks face-off, he did not intend to spend any more effort on elixir refinement. He had to make a choice. As the grade of the elixir increased, the requirements for the refinement technique increased, and the contents of the elixir recipe became more complicated. Su Zimo was not a god and did not have the time or energy to do so. The path he had to take was arduous and filled with thorns. Given the foundation of both immortality and demonic cultivation, Su Zimo could only choose weapon refinement. If it was Ling Hu or Little Crane, they would have pounced on the blood-flesh elixir in a frenzy the moment they caught sight of it. Who cares? I'll eat it first. However, Night Spirit's reaction was very calm. He glanced at the bottle of blood and flesh pills and curled his lips. His eyes were full of disdain. F***ck. Lin Xuanji was triggered. He felt that his self-esteem had been insulted and trampled upon. I was actually looked down upon by a dog. Lin Xuanji was so angry that his entire body shook and his eyes turned red. Su Zimo smiled and patted Lin Xuanji on the shoulder, saying earnestly, "You'll get used to it, Lin Xuanji." Lin Xuanji was indignant as he took out another pile of treasures from his storage bag. There were countless elixirs and elixirs that glowed with resplendent lights and a fragrant aroma. There were even inner cores of demon beasts. Night Spirit narrowed her eyes and laid lazily on Su Zimo's chest, ignoring Lin Xuanji. Lin Xuanji felt indignant. A moment later, Lin Xuanji could not take it any longer and crept closer to Su Zimo sneakily, whispering, "Fellow Taoist, what does this mad dog like? Tell me." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he nodded. "I can tell you, but you'll have to give me something in exchange." "What is it?" Lin Xuanji retreated half a step with a wary expression. "That minor transference talisman. Do you have any more?" "Sell me a few," Su Zimo said. Lin Xuanji nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. When Su Zimo saw that Lin Xuanji's expression was terrible and his body was trembling, seemingly on the verge of breaking down, he added hurriedly, "I'm buying it with spirit stones, I'm not robbing you. Fellow Taoist, you're too hot-tempered." Su Zimo did not know how precious the minor transference talisman was, and merely thought that it was a type of talisman that had a price. Lin Xuanji's mouth twitched as he glared at Su Zimo coldly. Grinding his teeth, he said word by word, "I only have one and you want a few. Do you think that minor transference talismans are cabbages that can be bought by the roadside?" Lin Xuanji roared out the last sentence. After roaring, Lin Xuanji panted heavily, still indignant. He looked at Night Spirit and said, "Night Spirit, your master is way too ignorant. What can you develop with him?" Lin Xuanji waved his arms in high spirits and declared loudly, "Let me tell you, if you follow me from now on, I guarantee that you'll have anything you want and eat anything you want." "Yeah." When he heard that, Night Spirit suddenly opened his eyes and called out softly, seemingly moved. Lin Xuanji's voice stopped abruptly. "Huh. There's a reaction?" Delighted, Lin Xuanji looked at Su Zimo and asked excitedly, "Fellow Taoist, what did Night Spirit say earlier on?" Su Zimo held back his laughter and replied, "Night Spirit said that he wanted to eat dragon eggs and asked if you could get him some." Lin Xuanji. "Uy, you guys." Lin Xuanji pointed at Su Zimo and Night Spirit with a trembling voice. His nose was crooked from anger. He felt that he was going to break down if he continued to stay with this man and beast duo. Take care of yourselves." Lin Xuanji flicked his sleeves angrily and soared into the air, speeding into the distance. "No matter what, thank you, fellow Taoist." When Su Zimo saw that Lin Xuanji was about to disappear, he shouted hurriedly. That was truly Su Zimo's heartfelt words. If not for Lin Xuanji, he would have died in the primordial ruin long ago. When he heard that, Lin Xuanji, who was initially speeding in midair, felt his legs go limp and he almost fell. Su Zimo had gained quite a bit from this trip. Not only did he get rid of the remaining power of blood slave art in his body, he even ate a dragon egg. However, he did not gain anything. All he did was eat some leftover egg juice. Lin Xuanji sped against the wind and felt increasingly aggrieved the more he thought about it. He had cultivated for dozens of years, and was the successor of the top faction of Tianhuang mainland. When had he ever suffered as such? That person must be the reincarnation of a jinx. Why am I so unlucky when I'm with him? A disciple of Misty Peak? I've got to deduce what that person's background is and what secrets he has. With that said, Lin Xuanji took a deep breath of air and a gray haze appeared in his eyes. Gradually, it spread out and turned into a faint mist that filled his eyes. Lin Xuanji extended his palm and his thumb touched his other four fingers repeatedly at an extremely fast speed. A mysterious power circled around Lin Xuanji's fingertips. A long time later, Lin Xuanji shuddered and the gray haze in his eyes dissipated. He muttered to himself in shock, "How is that possible? I can't deduce it?" Lin Xuanji frowned with a grim expression. That person is only a foundation establishment cultivator. How can I not deduce it? That doesn't make sense. Could it be that someone is hiding from the heavenly secrets? Lin Xuanji narrowed his eyes and murmured, "There's a supreme expert behind that lad." Chapter 247. After Lin Xuanji left, Su Zimo took out the map and compared it carefully. A moment later, Su Zimo was shocked to discover that he was at the center of the Great Zhou dynasty, and was less than 5 kilometers away from the capital. He was teleported to the vicinity of the capital of Great Zhou after summoning the minor transference talisman in the primordial ruin. After the battle at Dongling Valley, Su Zimo was fleeing and was getting further and further away from Misty Peak. If he did not have any other methods, given Su Zimo's foundation establishment cultivation, it would take him a few months to return to Misty Peak even if he traveled day and night without rest. Worried about the safety of everyone at Misty Peak, Su Zimo pondered for a moment and decided to head to the capital first to check out if he could get some information. Putting away the map, Su Zimo brought Night Spirit and soared into the air on his sword, speeding in the direction of the capital. An hour later, a towering black city wall appeared at the boundary between the heavens and the ground. The city wall rose from the ground and extended to the left and right without an end in sight. Just by looking at it from afar, one could sense the majesty of the city. It was like a primordial divine dragon lying on the horizon. Is this the capital of Great Zhou? The closer he got to the city, the more he could sense its majesty. Compared to the city before him, the capital of Yan country was like comparing a mansion to a city. The difference was huge. When he got closer, he could clearly see the traces of wind, frost, rain and snow on the surface of the city wall. It was mottled and old. However, the city still stood there, indestructible and unshakable for countless years. That was because this was the center of the Great Zhou dynasty. It was the capital of the dynasty where the emperor resided. In the direction of Su Zimo's city wall, there were 3 tall city gates with many guards on both sides. There was an endless stream of people, and more than half of them were cultivators. Hey, that cultivator over there. Those below Jindan realm are forbidden from flying in the capital. Hurry and come down. Right then, a shout came from the city gate, interrupting Su Zimo's thoughts. Unknowingly, Su Zimo had already arrived at the entrance of the capital on his sword. The guard below was referring to him. Even a vassal state like the Kingdom of Yan had all sorts of rules in the royal city, not to mention the city in front of him, which was the royal city of the Great Zhou dynasty. Su Zimo retracted his flying sword and landed at the city gate, following the crowd into the city. Su Zimo observed everything carefully. The guards on both sides of the capital would collect 10 spirit stones as entrance fee. Chi refinement warriors collected 10 inferior grade spirit stones and foundation establishment cultivators would collect 10 middle grade stones. As perfected being Dan, they could enter the city directly. That was the entrance. The entrance of the capital was Zhou the city, and Zhou was the entrance. The city was the city gate. One of the guards could tell that this was Su Zimo's first time in the capital, and reminded him out of goodwill that there were many rules in the capital that he should pay attention to. If he were to break the rules, the lightest punishment would be expulsion from the capital. In serious cases, it would be normal for him to be beheaded in public. Su Zimo thanked him and entered the city. Upon arriving in the capital, Su Zimo nodded to himself. The spirit chi in the capital was clearly richer than outside. There should be a formation expert who set up a massive spirit gathering formation inside and outside the Great Zhou dynasty to achieve such an effect. Su Zimo was deep in thought as he traversed the long street paved with limestone. Even for perfected being Jindan, he could not achieve true anidia and had to eat. Only after entering the nascent soul realm would one possess supreme dermic powers and be able to consume rain and dew, absorb the essence of heaven and earth, and the chi of the sun and moon to nourish one's body, and achieve anidia. Therefore, in the capital of Great Zhou, the place with the most information was none other than the restaurants. Su Zimo raised his head and caught sight of a 2-story restaurant not far away on his left. It was not even noon yet, but there were many guests inside, most of whom were cultivators. When Su Zimo entered the restaurant, he did not go to the private room on the 2nd floor. Instead, he found a seat by the window on the 1st floor, and sat down after ordering some food casually. Before long, the number of people on the 1st floor increased. Many cultivators gathered in 2s and 3s, discussing the recent happenings in the cultivation world. Su Zimo listened attentively while sipping his drink in no hurry. A long time later, a cultivator in the crowd suddenly said, "There's still more than 2 years until the sect competition. I think Misty Peak is in for it this time round." That's right. Because of such a huge change in Misty Peak, there will definitely be a lot of empty spots on the 4 ranking lists. Let's see who can get a spot. Isn't that so? I think many sects and cultivators have their eyes on the primordial ruins, thinking of getting their hands on treasures or something. By then, they'll definitely be able to shine in the sect competition. Just as everyone was discussing, a green-robed cultivator appeared out of nowhere and asked suddenly, I heard that many Foundation establishment cultivators of Misty Peak were surrounded and killed in Dongling Valley. What happened after that? How many disciples of Misty Peak managed to escape? Many cultivators turned to look at Su Zimo, who asked the question with strange gazes. Su Zimo smiled embarrassedly. I've been training outside and have just returned. This is the first time I've heard of this. Oh. Many cultivators nodded in realization. Someone said, Misty Peak suffered a huge blow from the encirclement this time round. From what I know, only a dozen or so of the Foundation establishment cultivators of Misty Peak managed to escape. Out of the 3 legacy disciples, 2 of them died in that battle. At the end of the day, Su Zimo felt slightly better about the fact that they were not completely wiped out. However, he was still worried about the safety of Little Fatty and Lung Ro. What about perfected being Jean Dan of Misty Peak? How are they? Su Zimo pondered for a moment and asked again. Even worse. The cultivator at the side shook his head. I heard that there were 5 perfected being Jean Dan of Misty Peak. In the end, only one of them managed to escape and was severely injured. No one knows if he's dead or alive. Su Zimo sighed internally. As others had said, Misty Peak was dealt a huge blow this time round. Almost all of the top Foundation establishment cultivators died in Dongling Valley. However, he did not know who the perfected being Jean Dan that managed to escape was. Was it Peak Master Wen Xian or Elder Yu? Right then, another cultivator said, I heard that none of the Misty Peak disciples managed to escape this time round. In the end, something happened on the battlefield. A Misty Peak disciple chose to sacrifice himself in order to save his fellow sect mates, and attracted more than half of the enemies away. Yes, I heard about that too. It's truly a pity for someone like that to die. The other person shook his head with a look of pity. Su Zimo realized that the Misty Peak disciple that the 2 of them were talking about should be him. However, there was a huge discrepancy between the situation and reality. Actually, that person might not be dead, Su Zimo said casually. Heh. One of them sneered. How could he have survived being hunted down by a few perfected being Jean Dan and being targeted by so many Foundation establishment cultivators? Another cultivator added, if he hadn't died, I'd have twisted my head off on the spot and let everyone kick it for fun. Chapter 248. In the northwest corner of the Great Zhou Dynasty, there was a market named Yongxing City. All sorts of people from all walks of life gathered there and it was bustling. In a corner of Yongxing City there was a group of people. There was an empty space in the middle of the crowd with a table. An old man with a Confucian crown and long robes leaned back in his chair with a rosy complexion and a long beard. The old man's left hand was pressed against a wooden block on the table, and his right hand was waving a paper fan. He was talking eloquently and everyone around him was mesmerized by his words. His attire, the wooden block on the table and the folding fan in his hands were enough to tell that he was a storyteller who traveled among the commoners and specialized in telling stories of the supernatural and the legends of the fiend demons. The stories told by storytellers were mysterious, magnificent and grotesque. To most mortals they were very attractive. That battle was so intense that mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. The ground was filled with corpses and blood flowed like rivers. It was extremely tragic. The old man waved his paper fan and said loudly, this human powerhouse made the void tremble when he took a step forward. With a loud roar he could bring down the stars. With a flip of his hand he could summon clouds and rain. Although the divine dragon was powerful enough to overturn rivers and seas and swallow the power of the sun and moon, it was still no match for this human. Everyone listened attentively. The battle lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. Finally, the divine dragon was slain by that person's sword. Countless blood splattered from the divine dragon's body. Many living beings could not dodge in time and were splashed by the blood. Unable to withstand the power of the divine dragon's bloodline, they exploded and died. Many people secretly clicked their tongues and let out cries of surprise. The old man was delighted when he saw everyone's reaction. He waved his folding fan gently and stroked his long beard, nodding with a smile. Fufu, right then, a stifled laugh sounded from outside the crowd. Those insubstantial things are only meant to fool mortals. What a joke. Who would have the stamina to fight for 2 days and 2 nights? You're even talking about the divine dragon as though you've seen it before. The person who spoke was a Foundation establishment cultivator. He happened to be passing by and stopped in his tracks to listen for a while before sneering coldly. In truth, true cultivators could not be bothered to listen to such things as they could easily tell the truth from the lies. When the old man saw that he was exposed, he could not help but blush as though he was enraged. Straightening his neck, he asked, "How do you know that I've never seen it before?" "Oh." The Foundation establishment cultivator glanced at the old man and sneered. "You don't have any spirit chi in your body. You're not a cultivator. I'd like to ask you, where did you see the divine dragon?" Through the spirit of life, he could tell that the old man was an ordinary mortal. The moment the old man heard that the other party was a cultivator, he immediately lost his imposing manner. He avoided the other party's gaze and retracted his neck. He muttered in a low voice, "Anyway, I've seen him before." The Foundation establishment cultivator Kurov Life pursed his lips and sneered of life cultivators of life. Not far away, there was a man in a gray robe. He was slightly plump and had a white face without a beard. He also held a folding fan in his hand and was walking towards them. "Storyteller, please continue." Someone couldn't wait any longer and urged from the side. Sweeping his gaze, the old man caught sight of the newcomer and the wooden block in his hands fell with a crisp thud. If you want to know what happened, listen to the next chapter. Keeping the wooden block, the old man closed his paper fan and waved his hand. "Let's disperse. I'll tell you another day." "Tsk," the crowd hissed. When they saw the old man stand up and leave, the crowd did not linger and dispersed as well. The old man entered the crowd and disappeared in a few steps. In an empty corner, the old man met with a gray-robed cultivator. "Old man, I failed. I didn't succeed." The gray-robed cultivator had an unlucky expression. It was Lin Xuanji who had just escaped from the primordial ruin. The old man twirled his 3 strands of long beard with an unfathomable look. He said with a smile, "I've already expected this." F***ck. When Lin Xuanji heard that, he jumped up in anger. "Old man, you're so ruthless. You've already divined it and yet you still sent me to that lousy place? I almost lost my life. What do you know?" The old man replied calmly, "The divination I divined shows that you'll be fine on this trip. Although you're destined to fail, it's not a wasted trip." "Is that so?" Lin Xuanji asked through gritted teeth. "Of course. My divination won't be wrong." The old man was confident. Lin Xuanji could not hold it in any longer and shouted, "I didn't even get anything. I only ate some egg juice and it was left behind by a dog." "What egg juice? What dog?" The old man was stunned after being sprayed with saliva. Lin Xuanji recounted everything that happened in the dragon's lair of the primordial ruin in detail. "You ate the dragon's egg? You're sick." The old man was so angry that he shuddered. Raising his palm, he slapped Lin Xuanji viciously. "Hey, don't hit me, it wasn't me, it was that Su Zimo and a dog." Lin Xuanji dodged repeatedly but to no avail. With a smack, a bright red handprint appeared on his left cheek. "Old man, I used the minor transference talisman as well." "Piak." Without another word, the old man slapped him once more. A handprint appeared on Lin Xuanji's right cheek as well and refused to fade. The old man stroked his beard and frowned. "That doesn't make sense. The divination shouldn't be wrong and your trip shouldn't have been in vain. Could it be that the divination is referring to that Su Zimo?" "Right, old man, this person has some tricks up his sleeves. I can't divine his background and fortune," Lin Xuanji said. "There's such a thing?" An obscure ripple spread out from the old man's glabella and enveloped the entire capital instantly. Before long he found Su Zimo in a restaurant. A soft look appeared in the old man's eyes and dissipated rapidly, turning into a hazy gray mist. The old man opened his palm and divined. As time passed by, the old man's frown deepened and his expression turned grimmer while his face turned paler. Given the old man's cultivation realm, He could divine a foundation establishment cultivator in the blink of an eye. But now 2 hours had passed. Lin Xuanji held his breath at the side and waited silently, afraid that he would disturb the old man. After another hour, the old man shuddered and grunted dully. The soft look in his eyes dissipated and was replaced with streaks of blood. It was frightening. "Old man, how are you?" Lin Xuanji knew that this was the result of forceful divinations. Some people had unique destinies, and if they were forcefully divined and did not stop in time, it was normal for them to go blind. In more serious cases, bad luck might even befall them. "It's fine." The old man waved it off and heaved a long sigh of relief. This lad's destiny was ordinary, and initially, there was nothing special about it. However, an expert defied the heavens and changed his destiny, causing it to change drastically. "Even I can't divine it anymore." "Ah!" Lin Xuanji's eyes widened in disbelief. Defied the heavens and changed his destiny? He knew the weight of the words defied the heavens and changed one's destiny. Even the old man before him could not do it. Right then the old man's expression changed and his eyes shone brightly. Chapter 249. Noticing the strange expression on the old man's face, Lin Xuanji could not help but ask, "Old man, what happened? You said that the three of you ate that dragon egg?" The old man was expressionless and asked instead of answering. Stunned for a moment, Lin Xuanji shook his head hurriedly. "I only ate a little bit of egg juice. That man and beast ate almost everything. Both of them ate so much that their mouths were glowing, and they couldn't hold it in even if they wanted to." "A little bit." The old man sneered. "Even if you ate a single drop, don't think about denying it. Do you think that dragon eggs are that delicious? Do you think you can just leave after you've eaten your fill?" "Old man, what do you mean by that? Don't scare me. A dragon has come knocking on our door." "Ah, stay here and don't leave the city." As soon as the old man finished speaking, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. Outside the city gates, a tall woman in green armor walked towards the city gates with a cold expression. She exuded a chilling aura and her eyes were filled with killing intent. The armor on the man's body was extremely unique and resembled green fish scales that were connected perfectly. The closer she was to the city gates, the denser the crowd became. When the green-armored woman arrived, she had no intention of slowing down as she squeezed through the crowd and headed straight for the city gates. "What are you squeezing for? Do you have a death wish?" A foundation establishment cultivator at the front turned around and glared at the green-armored woman. He placed his hand in his storage bag with a threatening look in his eyes. In the royal city, apart from some special areas, killing and fighting were prohibited. However, this was outside the capital after all, and the guards would not interfere if a fight were to break out. Against the threat of the foundation establishment cultivator, the green-armored woman continued walking expressionlessly without even pausing. The foundation establishment cultivator opposite frowned and used his spirit-peering art to check the green-armored woman's body. However, he did not find any trace of spirit chi. Most importantly, the green-armored woman did not have a storage bag on her. That meant that she was only a mortal. "You don't know what's good for you." The foundation establishment cultivator was relieved and cursed. He withdrew a flying sword from his storage bag and injected spirit energy into it. Whoosh! 2 spirit patterns lit up on the sword. It was a middle-grade flying sword. "Quick!" The foundation establishment cultivator scolded softly, and his flying sword pierced towards the azure-armored woman's forehead. The surrounding crowd had already dispersed, afraid that they would be implicated. The green-armored woman ignored the flying sword and continued to walk forward. The foundation establishment cultivator on the other side sneered in his heart as a sinister look flashed across his eyes. Clang! When the flying sword struck the green-armored woman's glabella, it was actually repelled, emitting the sound of metal clashing. The foundation establishment cultivator's expression changed. The onlookers were also dumbfounded. A mid-grade flying sword couldn't even pierce through his body? What was his cultivation level? At this moment, the green-armored woman had already arrived in front of him. Suddenly, she stretched out her arm and extended a slender finger, lightly tapping the foundation establishment cultivator's head. The foundation establishment cultivator could clearly see the green-armored woman's finger pointing at him, but he felt that he couldn't move at all. He couldn't dodge it no matter how hard he tried. Puff! A crisp sound rang out. The azure-armored woman retracted her hand. There was a bloody hole in the Foundation establishment cultivator's head and blood was gushing out. The man's eyes dimmed, and he fell to the ground with a thud, dying on the spot. Everyone was in an uproar when they saw that. The guards at the city gates initially had the mentality of watching the show, but now they were suddenly nervous, as though they were facing a formidable enemy. Although the guards did not have high cultivation realms, they had seen too many people after guarding the city gates all year round. They could sense an extremely dangerous aura coming from the green-armored woman. Halt! Report your name, which sect are you from and which country are you from? One of the guards shouted. The green-armored woman continued walking forward expressionlessly. It was as though there was nothing and no one in the world that could stop her. The expressions of the guards changed as they withdrew their flying swords from their storage bags, prepared to attack. Fellow Taoist, you've crossed the line. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. The guards felt their vision blur as an old man in long robes with a Confucian hairstyle appeared before them. Strangely enough, the green-armored woman actually stopped in her tracks after the old man appeared and a hint of wariness flashed through her eyes. The old man said indifferently, "Go back. You're trying to stop me?" The green-armored woman opened her mouth and narrowed her eyes. An ancient aura began to exude from her body, as strong and dignified as a divine being that was irresistible. Shrouded by that aura, everyone in the surroundings, be it mortals or cultivators, felt a sense of reverence that made them want to kneel on the ground and prostrate in worship. Roar! Suddenly, the green-armored woman opened her mouth and let out a deafening roar from the depths of her throat that pierced through metal and rocks. Dragon roar! Poof! 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 The people closest to the green-armored woman exploded instantly, turning into blood mists. Clang! Clang! The flying swords in the hands of many guards fell as they hugged their heads with both hands with pained expressions. Blood was already seeping out of their ears. "Beast, how dare you act rashly in front of me?" The old man shouted loudly. His voice was loud and clear like a great bell. It contained a powerful force and instantly interrupted the dragon roar that resounded through the world. If not for the old man's voice, the hundreds of people outside the city gates would have died. Everyone snapped out of their stupor and panted heavily. Just now they felt as though they had just taken a trip to the gates of hell, and were still traumatized. Unknowingly, a folding fan appeared in the old man's hands. In a flash, the old man closed in on the green-armored woman and swung the folding fan in his hands, smashing it down on her face. Boom! The green-armored woman stomped on the ground, causing mud to fly everywhere. She sped backwards and dodged the old man's folding fan. In midair, the green-armored woman's body expanded continuously. Right in front of everyone, a menacing and gigantic divine dragon soared into the skies and appeared before everyone, circling above their heads with a destructive aura. That's a CC dragon? Heavens, dragons really exist in this world. Many cultivators were scared out of their wits and fell to the ground one after another with trembling voices. Even the guards of the capital felt powerless at that moment. They could not muster any thoughts of resistance against the might of the divine dragon. The scales that seemed like they were molded with molten steel, the sharp claws and fangs, the indestructible body. There was no part of the divine dragon that did not exude danger and strength. The old man's expression was unchanged as he soared into the air to confront the divine dragon. To think that he possessed an aura that surpassed the divine dragon's. Although the old man's body looked insignificant and was not even comparable to a single scale on the divine dragon, there seemed to be a destructive power within that was about to burst out. If you don't retreat, don't blame me for being merciless. I'll kill you today. The old man glared coldly at the divine dragon opposite him and warned, "Roar!" The divine dragon opened its gigantic mouth and spat out a green dragon flame that incinerated the surrounding air and spirit chi instantly before surging towards the old man. Chapter 250. Humph! Against the incoming scorching dragon flames, the old man's expression did not change as he harumphed coldly. With a flick of his wrist, he opened his folding fan and released an incomparably resplendent golden light. The folding fan in the old man's hands seemed to have transformed into a blazing sun, emitting a bedazzling golden light. Instantly, all the spectators in the capital, be it cultivators or mortals, felt a piercing pain in their eyes. Their vision was drowned by the endless light, and they were momentarily blinded. The crowd outside the capital was the closest to the battlefield and cried out in pain. Instinctively, they tilted their heads and closed their eyes as tears streamed down their faces. Roar! The divine dragon seemed to have recognized the folding fan in the old man's hands as it let out a deep growl with a wary look in its eyes. Swash! Wielding the folding fan, the old man swiped forward. The incoming green dragon flames were like a piece of cloth that was split in the middle by the folding fan and slid to the sides. Almost instantly, the old man arrived before the divine dragon. The divine dragon raised its head and straightened its body, reaching out with a pair of gigantic dragon claws to grab the old man viciously. The old man's expression did not change and he did not dodge or retreat. Instead, he simply extended his arm and clenched his fist, punching towards the incoming dragon claws. Bang! There was a deafening bang. Many cultivators outside the capital could not withstand it and fainted on the spot. The entire monarch city trembled slightly under the reverberation of this voice. A series of cracks appeared in the void at the center of the collision. It was pitch black within and emitted a chilling aura that was frightening. Even the void was cracking. The old man's seemingly small body remained motionless in midair. On the other hand, the divine dragon was the one that was pushed back. After that punch, the old man swept the folding fan in his hands forward and sliced across the divine dragon's body with an ear-piercing sound. It was as though metal was being sliced across a mirror, causing one's teeth to ache. A flash of blood appeared. A stream of dragon blood splattered and dyed the skies red. A gigantic gash appeared on the side of the dragon's body. The dragon scales had already been scraped off, revealing the scarlet flesh within. With a tragic cry, the divine dragon soared into the air and soared above the 9 firmaments. The old man held the folding fan in one hand and placed the other behind his back. He looked at the divine dragon in the clouds indifferently without giving chase. The divine dragon turned around and glared at the old man. His eyes were filled with murderous intent and unwillingness. However, it was clearly aware that if it continued to deal with this old man, then it was very likely that it would be buried here. Roar! The divine dragon let out a long roar into the sky. Riding on the clouds, it sped into the distance and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. After the divine dragon escaped, the old man closed his folding fan but did not leave immediately. The old man's gaze landed on a spot not far away. There was nothing there, but the old man continued to stare at it, a hint of warning in his eyes. After a long time, the old man withdrew his gaze and heaved a sigh of relief. With a wave of his sleeve, he vanished. Within the capital, many cultivators only reacted to the situation a long time after the old man disappeared, bursting into a commotion. Did you guys see that? It's actually a divine dragon. So this kind of ancient creature really does exist in this world. Now that I've seen it today, I have no regrets in this life. This divine dragon's aura is too terrifying. Even from so far away, I feel a sense of trepidation, as though I could die at any moment. Many cultivators gathered together with excited expressions as they discussed spiritedly. Be it Foundation Establishment cultivators or perfected Gene Dan, these cultivators might not even get to see the true appearance of dragons in their entire lives. In fact, most of the cultivators were like Su Zimo and thought that the divine dragon was merely an illusory legend that was conjectured by some people. How could there be such a powerful and terrifying living being in Tianhuang mainland? But now that everyone saw it with their own eyes, they truly felt that the divine dragon outside the capital was far stronger than they had imagined and was even more terrifying than the legends. Just who was it that was able to stop such a powerful existence? The divine dragon was already so strong. Just now, what cultivation realm was the person who stopped it? I don't know. I can't see clearly. Everyone shook their heads. This great battle, everyone saw it clearly and vividly. Everyone saw the divine dragon coiling in midair as well. However, no one saw the person who was fighting against the divine dragon clearly. A perfected Gene Dan said hesitantly. That person was shrouded in a layer of mist the entire time and couldn't be seen clearly. He seemed to be a middle-aged man. Where did that divine dragon come from? Why is it here? I'm not sure. I have a feeling that something big is going to happen in the Tianhuang mainland north region. Although Su Zimo looked calm on the surface when he heard the discussions around him, his heart was in turmoil. Nobody knew the background of the divine dragon better than him. This divine dragon was the one he saw in the primordial ruin. Naturally, his motive for coming here was self-evident as well. It was to hunt them down. Su Zimo had long known that the moment they ate the dragon egg, they would form an irreconcilable feud with the divine dragon and all dragons. That was the reason why he said that Night Spirit was in trouble. However, Su Zimo had not expected that the divine dragon would be able to find its way here even after they used the minor transference talisman to escape from the primordial ruin. If not for that mysterious expert today, he and Night Spirit would most likely have died by now. How did it find its way here? The minor transference talisman was used for spatial teleportation. Perhaps the divine dragon could determine the general direction given its capabilities. However, how did it determine that he and Night Spirit were in the capital of Great Zhou so accurately? This time round, the divine dragon was indeed repelled by a mysterious expert. However, there was no way that mysterious expert could appear around Su Zimo at any time. Only the heavens knew where that person came from, what he looked like and what his background was. If the divine dragon were to come knocking the next time, who would be able to save him and Night Spirit? Su Zimo's heart was shrouded in a layer of haze. At the center of the capital stood a majestic palace that occupied a huge area. It was the Emperor's palace. Outside the palace stood a dense crowd of black-armored soldiers. Every single one of them was a Foundation establishment cultivator, and there were a total of 10,000 of them. All of them knelt on one knee in an orderly formation in a disciplined manner. At the entrance of the palace stood a middle-aged man in yellow robes. His face was chiseled and his gaze was blazing. He exuded a dignified aura that came from someone who had been in a high position for a long time. The yellow-robed man's bronze skin added a hint of bloodlust and killing intent to his face. This was the emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty. He was in charge of thousands of kilometers of territory and ruled over the feudal vassals with a might that shook the world. The yellow-robed man asked everyone, "What do you think?" "Your Majesty, that person is extremely strong and should be one of the top existences in Tianhuang mainland. He's definitely not someone of the Great Zhou dynasty." Behind the yellow-robed man, a perfected Jin Dan said slowly, "Perfected Lord Mingzhe, did you manage to catch a glimpse of that expert's appearance?" The yellow-robed man glanced sideways and asked with a nod. The fact that he was addressed as a perfected lord meant that this person was already at nascent soul realm. "I didn't manage to catch a clear glimpse either." Perfected Lord Mingzhe shook his head. "Since that person isn't willing to reveal his identity, let's not investigate further lest we incur his wrath and get ourselves killed." The yellow-robed man nodded and looked into the distance, murmuring softly, "With the appearance of the dragons, is the world truly about to descend into chaos?" Chapter 251. In a secluded corner of the capital, the old man appeared. Lin Xuanji leaned forward and gave him a thumbs up. "Old man, you've got some skills. You chased away a divine dragon in a couple of rounds." The old man rolled his eyes. "Dragons differ in strength as well. That dragon belongs to the Azure Dragon lineage. Although it's an adult Azure Dragon, it has yet to reach its peak. Furthermore, it has just laid an egg and its essence energy is greatly damaged. That's why its strength has decreased significantly." "Then why didn't you kill that Azure Dragon earlier on?" Lin Xuanji rubbed his hands. "Since we're already enemies, I might as well kill it and get rid of all future troubles." "Kid, you make it sound so easy with your lips," the old man sneered. "Do you know what the consequences will be if you kill that Azure Dragon? Rivers of blood will flow in the capital of Great Zhou, and no one will be spared. That's considered light. In the worst case, the entire north region of primordial chaos would be littered with corpses and piled up into mountains." "Old man, don't scare me," Lin Xuanji was shocked. "Scare you? Back then that—" The old man stopped mid-sentence and shook his head. "Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore." F***ck. Lin Xuanji's ears perked up to listen intently when the old man stopped talking. The old man waved it off. "Furthermore, do you think that the Azure Dragon came by itself? There's another dragon in the dark who has yet to appear." That dragon is the true expert. Lin Xuanji frowned and asked, Old man, I used a minor transference talisman. How did that azure dragon find this place? The three of you ate the dragon egg. That's equivalent to eating a dragon. Although that dragon isn't fully formed yet, how much energy does it contain? The old man said, the only way to avoid the azure dragon's senses is to refine and absorb the energy within your body completely. Mine was easy. I only ate a bit of egg juice. I'll probably be able to refine it in a month or so. Lin Xuanji gloated. That Su Zimo and that dog are in for it. They ate so much, haha. The old man pondered for a moment and said, Go remind him not to leave the capital of Great Zhou before he refines the essence energy of the dragon egg in his body. Ah! Lin Xuanji was stunned. Old man, you're not planning to stay here forever, are you? Of course not. The old man shook his head and said, When you finish refining the dragon egg's essence, we will return to the central continent. The primordial battlefield will open in another 2 years. I have to go back and prepare in advance. Tianhuang mainland was divided into 4 regions, 3 seas, and 1 continent. The 4 regions referred to the Eastern region, Western region, Southern region, and Northern region. The Great Zhou dynasty was located in the northern region of the Infinite region. One of the continents referred to the Middle continent. Located in the center of Tianhuang mainland, it was vast and was even larger than the other 4 regions combined. If a foundation establishment cultivator were to travel on his sword at full speed, he would not be able to cross the entire northern region of Tianhuang mainland even if he exhausted his lifespan, let alone enter the middle continent. Perfected being Jin Dan was faster and had a longer lifespan. However, no one would waste their precious time on the road in order to head to the middle continent. Furthermore, the journey was fraught with danger and demon beasts roamed the mountains and rivers. One would most likely die before they even reached the middle continent. Only by reaching nascent soul realm would one have the ability to protect themselves and attempt to cross the 4 regions in 1 continent. In the restaurant, Su Zimo listened to the discussions around him while eating the food he ordered. Suddenly, a person sat down opposite the table. Su Zimo raised his head and was slightly stunned. Lin Xuanji. After the 2 of them escaped from the primordial ruin, they parted ways. To think that he would meet this person again in the capital. Su Zimo poured a bowl of wine for Lin Xuanji and smiled. To think that we would meet so quickly. Seems like we're fated. When he heard the word fated, Lin Xuanji's mouth twitched. Because they were fated, he was almost scammed by Su Zimo and that dog the entire way. The dragon egg was gone. His tracks were even exposed and he was hunted down by the dragons. His minor transference talisman was gone as well. He was even slapped twice by the old man and the handprint had just faded. At the thought of that, Lin Xuanji was furious. He replied coldly, It's not fated. I'm the one who sought you out. Oh! Su Zimo exclaimed softly and asked, What are your instructions, fellow Taoist? Don't leave the capital of Great Zhou before you refine the essence energy in your body. Lin Xuanji continued, Just now, you must have seen the battle outside the city. That dragon sensed the energy in your body, and that's why it came here. Su Zimo frowned, that was what he was worried about. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, however, It's not a good idea for me to stay in the capital and refine the essence energy. What if the dragons come knocking during this period of time? Unless that mysterious expert is guarding this place the entire time and can appear to stop the divine dragon. Even if the old man isn't guarding this place, you'll be relatively safer in the capital. Lin Xuanji said. The dragons will definitely have reservations after today's battle. After all, they might not dare to come knocking again after suffering a loss once. However, you haven't refined the essence energy of the dragon egg. The moment you leave the capital, the dragons will definitely sense it and hunt you down. By then you'll definitely die. Su Zimo remained silent. His original plan was to return to Misty Peak immediately. He was extremely concerned about Little Fatty and the others, Monkey, Ling Hu and Little Crane. However, after hearing Lin Xuanji's analysis, Su Zimo realized that he had no other choice but to stay in the capital. Of course, it was not a bad thing for him to stay in the capital. Firstly, he could ensure his safety for the time being. Secondly, he could save a lot of time on the road to raise his cultivation and refine the essence energy of the dragon egg. Right now, what Su Zimo needed the most was time to cultivate. He had gained way too much in the past year, and had yet to settle down and convert them into true combat strength. Thirdly, the sect competition was going to be held 2 years later, and all the sects of the Great Zhou dynasty would have to rush to the capital. Misty Peak would be there as well. That way, Su Zimo could meet everyone from Misty Peak in the capital, and save himself the trouble of traveling back and forth. At that thought, Su Zimo made up his mind. For some reason, Su Zimo could vaguely sense that there was something wrong with Lin Xuanji's words just now. Alright, that's all I'll tell you. Lin Xuanji stood up and was about to leave. Su Zimo looked at Lin Xuanji's cheeks and said with a fake smile, "Fellow Taoist, your cheeks have gotten fatter after not seeing you for half a day." Lin Xuanji's expression froze as he grit his teeth. "I'm happy to." With that, he flicked his sleeves and left while mumbling, "Damned old man." He didn't hold back at all. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly realized that there was something wrong with Lin Xuanji's words just now. "Even if that old man isn't here, you'll be safer in the capital." That was what Lin Xuanji had said earlier on. How did Lin Xuanji know that the mysterious expert was an old man? None of the cultivators outside the capital caught a clear glimpse of the mysterious expert's appearance. Coincidence? Was it a casual remark? Or? Su Zimo's eyes flickered in deep thought. Chapter 252. The streets of the capital were bustling and bustling. The earth-shattering battle outside the city did not affect the people in the city. Instead, it became a topic of conversation. Su Zimo left the restaurant and walked aimlessly in the bustling crowd, thinking about his future plans. Since he had decided to stay in the capital, the first thing he had to do was find a place to stay. Su Zimo would have to stay at this place for at least 2 to 3 years. It would not be able to cope. It had to be quiet and have a pleasant environment suitable for cultivation. Su Zimo asked around and headed straight for Sky Treasure Pavilion. The fastest way to find a place in the capital that he liked was to post missions at Sky Treasure Pavilion. Most of the people who entered Sky Treasure Pavilion in the capital of Yen Country were Qi refinement warriors. It was rare for a Foundation Establishment cultivator to appear in a year. However, Foundation Establishment cultivators could be seen everywhere in Sky Treasure Pavilion of the Great Zhou Dynasty. In fact, there were even many perfected Jin Dan. Although Su Zimo was a mid-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, he was inconspicuous in the crowd. After entering the main hall, Su Zimo came before a cabinet and a beautiful maidservant walked up. She was dressed in a thin veil that revealed her petite figure and curves. The beautiful maidservant revealed a sweet smile and asked, "Fellow Taoist, what can I do for you?" Su Zimo asked, "I want to buy a house in the city. Do you have any recommendations?" "Fellow Taoist, the best houses in the capital are mostly located on both sides of Jishui River. When you're bored of cultivation, you can open the windows and see the clear river. It's refreshing." The beautiful maidservant took out a map and pointed at the houses on both sides of the river, introducing them with a smile. Su Zimo nodded and chose a house by the shore, saying, "Let's do it here." "Do you have a Sky Treasure badge?" the beautiful maidservant asked. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. He did have a Sky Treasure gold badge in his storage bag. However, that badge was extraordinary and would attract quite a bit of trouble each time he took it out. Now that they were in the capital, Su Zimo did not want to have anything to do with Ji Yaoxue and incur the enmity of the Emperor of Great Zhou. Back then, the scene of Dai Su escorting Ji Yaoxue out of Pingyang town was still vivid in his mind. Su Zimo could clearly feel Dai Su's killing intent towards him. The beautiful maid smiled and said, "If you don't have the Sky Treasure badge, the total price of this house is 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones." "Yes, 100,000. Su Zimo nodded. Just as he was about to agree, his expression changed. He looked at the beautiful maid in disbelief and asked seriously, 100,000 pieces of high-grade spirit stones? Yes. The beautiful maid's smile didn't fade. So expensive? Su Zimo was secretly shocked. If it was 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones, he could still afford it. However, 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones were equivalent to 10 million middle-grade spirit stones. He only had 200,000 middle-grade spirit stones left in his storage bag, and it was far from enough. The beautiful maid explained, The spirit chi in the capital is much richer than outside, and you'll be able to cultivate with half the effort. Pausing for a moment, the beautiful maid continued, furthermore, apart from some special areas, killing and fighting are prohibited in the capital. If anyone attacks without permission, they'll definitely be killed by the imperial army of the capital. Even perfected Jin Dan is no exception. Therefore, you don't have to worry about your safety when cultivating in the capital. Su Zimo remained silent. Even if there were no downsides, he couldn't afford it. Why don't we change to a more secluded corner? It'll be cheaper. After a while, the beautiful maid could tell that Su Zimo was troubled and suggested, "Forget it." Su Zimo waved it off and asked in a deep voice, "I'll rent this house for 3 years. How much is it?" The beautiful maid smiled. A year's rent is 3,000 superior grade spirit stones. That's 300,000 middle grade spirit stones. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Prior to this, he truly hadn't expected that the houses in the capital would be so expensive. "I'll rent it for a year first." Su Zimo took out all the middle grade spirit stones in his storage bag and sold some of the spirit weapons and elixirs in the blood-robed youth storage bag on the spot, barely managing to gather 300,000 middle grade spirit stones. After handing over the spirit stones, Sky Treasure Pavilion was extremely efficient as they registered it swiftly and sent someone to bring Su Zimo to his residence. Su Zimo walked around the house and was satisfied. Although he no longer had any spirit stones on him and his future cultivation would be a problem, he was in no hurry. Su Zimo intended to open a weapon workshop here and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. On the one hand, he could earn spirit stones from weapon refinement to supplement his daily cultivation and expenditure. On the other hand, Su Zimo had already mastered the art of tempering, and with the image of weapon refinement left behind by Hakura Dojin, he could make use of the weapon workshop to practice continuously and truly improve his skills. Su Zimo was not only a weapon refinement master, he was also a sword formation master. This meant that the deeper his attainments in weapon refinement, the greater the increase in his combat strength. That was because Su Zimo could refine flying swords of higher grades, and the sword formations he created would naturally be stronger. Furthermore, he had once obtained a secret sword formation skill from Hakura Dojin called the Candlelight Sword Formation, but he had never had the chance to use it. In the remaining 2.5 years, Su Zimo intended to raise his weapon refinement standards and create a new set of high-grade flying swords. 2.5 years was enough for him to refine the essence energy of the dragon egg within his body. Before the sect competition, Su Zimo would truly be reborn and his strength would increase tremendously. Su Zimo left the place temporarily with Night Spirit and headed towards the northwest corner of the Great Zhou dynasty. That was Yongxing City, a place where people from all walks of life gathered. Many elixir and weapon workshops were open there as well. Su Zimo intended to take a look around and check out the market. Although Su Zimo believed that his weapon refinement skills were not weaker than others, if he did not understand the market and the location was not in the downtown area, he might not be able to open his weapon workshop. Before long, Su Zimo arrived at Yongxing City. Yongxing City was divided into many streets. Some of the streets were dedicated to elixir refinement, while others were dedicated to weapon refinement. Su Zimo looked around as he walked. The weapon workshops on both sides of the streets were lined up one after another. Some of them were opened by individuals such as Liu Clan's weapon workshop and Chan Seven's weapon workshop. Most of them were weapon workshops with sect logos such as Fian Weapon Workshop, Scarlet Rainbow Weapon Workshop, Golden Wave Weapon Workshop and True Fire Weapon Workshop. Among them, True Fire Weapon Workshop was opened by one of the 5 major sects, True Fire Sect. It was also the largest shop with the best business in Yongxing City. Most of the other weapon workshops only had 2 or 3 people in front of them. However, there was a long queue in front of True Fire Weapon Workshop. True Fire Sect was one of the 5 major sects to begin with, and had the highest achievements in elixir and weapon refinement within the Great Zhou dynasty. Every year, True Fire Sect would take up at least half of the 10 spots on the elixir and weapon rankings. It was reasonable for True Fire Weapon Workshop to have such good business in the capital. Su Zimo walked over and joined the queue as well. Chapter 253. Ordinary flying swords could be purchased at Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, if one wanted to refine a flying sword that was most suitable for them, the size, weight and materials of the flying sword would have to be customized according to their requirements. It was even more so for defensive spirit weapons such as robes and inner armor. Everyone had a different physique and naturally had to be customized. Su Zimo had already observed most of it while queuing. Typically, a custom-made middle-grade spirit weapon would require 3,000 to 5,000 middle-grade spirit stones and 3 sets of materials. A custom-made superior-grade spirit weapon would require 3,000 to 5,000 superior-grade spirit stones and 10 sets of materials. After a long time, it was finally Su Zimo's turn. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and asked, "Fellow Taoist, I can understand preparing materials for custom-made spirit weapons, but why do you need to prepare 3 sets? You need to prepare 10 sets for a custom-made superior-grade spirit weapon?" When he heard that, the disciple of True Fire sect sneered. "Are you playing dumb with me? Which weapon refinement master would dare to guarantee that they can refine a superior-grade spirit weapon with a single set of materials? Do you think that weapon refinement masters have a 100% success rate for spirit gathering? The higher the grade of the spirit weapon, the lower the success rate of spirit gathering. Naturally, one would have to prepare more materials. Even so, we're taking a risk." Everyone from True Fire sect in the weapon workshop looked at Su Zimo with obvious mockery. This person knows nothing and he's here asking for a custom-made spirit weapon. I wonder where this country bumpkin came from. He hasn't seen the world. I reckon that this lad is poor and is just here to join in the fun. When he heard those discussions, Su Zimo smiled and did not rebut, continuing to ask, "What's the price of a custom-made supreme-grade spirit weapon?" Haha. A series of laughter sounded outside True Fire Weapon Workshop. I told you, this person is just here to join in the fun. He's even putting on an act as though he knows everything. Custom-made supreme-grade spirit weapon? To think that he can even ask something like that. I'm dying of laughter. Someone lamented, "How ignorant." Su Zimo looked calmly at the group of laughing True Fire sect disciples opposite him with a faint smile on his face. A cultivator standing behind Su Zimo seemed to be unable to bear it and explained in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, supreme-grade spirit weapons are not custom-made. Even if someone prepared 100 sets of materials, no refiner would dare to take it. Refining supreme-grade spirit weapons requires luck and opportunity. The failure rate is too high." Su Zimo nodded. That person continued, "If a weapon refinement master can refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon in his lifetime, it's enough for him to be famous throughout the great Zhou dynasty. Moreover, the price of a supreme-grade spirit weapon was not fixed. If it was put in an auction house, it could be sold for at least 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. If someone bids for it, it's possible to sell it for millions." There were a total of 3 spiritual inscriptions on a superior-grade spiritual weapon. At most, it could be sold for 5,000 superior-grade spiritual stones. However, supreme-grade spirit weapons were more than 100 times more expensive than superior-grade spirit weapons, even though they only had one more spirit pattern. The gap between them could be imagined. Don't waste time here. Get lost. The manager of True Fire Weapon Workshop walked over and waved at Su Zimo, not concealing the disgust in his eyes. Su Zimo was not enraged and merely smiled. "Manager, I believe that you'll definitely regret this one day." With that said, Su Zimo turned and left. After checking out the market, Su Zimo already had an idea of what was going on. Furthermore, Su Zimo was even more certain that his weapon workshop would become the largest in the capital, and even trample True Fire Weapon Workshop beneath his feet. Before he walked far, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he swept his gaze across a corner not far away. There was a girl around 14 or 15 years old curled up on the ground. She was filthy from head to toe and her clothes were tattered. Her yellow hair was messy and her face was covered in dirt. The only thing that was clear was her eyes. A cold gust of wind blew and the little girl shrank her neck, pursing her lips and shivering. For some reason, Su Zimo was reminded of Xiaoning when he saw this little girl. Back when Xiaoning left, she was only a few years older than this little girl. Su Zimo sighed internally and bought a few buns nearby. Wrapping them in oil paper, he handed them to the little girl and said gently, "Eat up." A hint of fear flashed through the little girl's eyes. She hesitated and did not take the oil paper. Su Zimo did not insist either. Placing the oil paper beside the little girl, he took out a green robe from his storage bag and draped it over the little girl before standing up. That action made the little girl less wary of Suzimo. Reaching out with her filthy hands, she tried to pick up a bun. Suzimo was about to leave when Night Spirit suddenly moved in his embrace. A dark little head popped out and glanced at the little girl. Before Suzimo could say anything, Night Spirit suddenly jumped out and ran in front of the little girl, sniffing at her. Ah! The little girl was shocked and the bun she had just picked up dropped to the ground. Suzimo frowned and hurriedly pulled Night Spirit back, stuffing it into his embrace. Unlike usual, Night Spirit did not hide. Instead, it stuck its little head out and kept looking at the little girl. Suzimo revealed an apologetic look and said softly, "Don't be afraid. It won't hurt you." The little girl did not say anything. She only glared at Suzimo warily. Suzimo gave a bitter smile and shook his head before turning to leave. The two of them did not know each other and had met by chance. Suzimo was touched. On account of Xiaoning, he gave her a meal and a set of clothes. That was already the most benevolent thing he could do. Suzimo headed back to his residence. He had not walked far when Suzimo's heart skipped a beat and he glanced sideways. From the corner of his eye, Suzimo caught sight of the little girl who was wrapped in his green robes, wolfing down the bun and following behind him, maintaining a certain distance. Suzimo smiled and was not bothered. Before long, Suzimo arrived at the entrance of Yongxing City. A large group of people surrounded the entrance of Yongxing City. Although there were many people, it was extremely quiet and one could only hear the voices of the crowd. That battle lasted for 2 days and 2 nights, causing the skies to darken and the earth to crack. Finally, the divine dragon was slain by that man and corpses were strewn all over the ground. Blood flowed like rivers in an extremely tragic manner. In the middle of the crowd, an old man with a Confucian hairstyle and long robes was telling a story eloquently. To begin with, he was a storyteller who roamed the world and made up stories that could not be taken seriously. Suzimo had heard many of them. However, for some reason, when he heard the words of the old man just now, Suzimo could not help but recall the tragic sea of bones in the periphery of the primordial ruin. Suzimo shook his head and did not think too much about it. He merely lamented internally, "The divine dragon has just appeared and someone is already making up stories about it. That's pretty convincing." Right then someone raised his voice. "Storyteller, you've just told us this part in the morning." "I did, but some people didn't hear it," the old man smiled. Suzimo paused in his tracks and turned around slowly to look at the old man in the crowd. Did the old man mean something or was it just a casual remark? Chapter 254. As the crowd dispersed, the old storyteller closed his fan slowly and hid the wooden stick in his sleeves. In the midst of the crowd, Suzimo blinked. By the time he looked again, the old man had already vanished. Frowning, Suzimo pondered for a moment before heading back to his residence. Right after Suzimo left Yongxing City, the old storyteller appeared out of nowhere and wandered to an empty corner. Lin Xuanji was standing there, bored. When he saw the old man, Lin Xuanji hurried forward and asked softly with an expectant gaze, "Old man, how was it? Did you see anything?" "I couldn't tell. That lad's fate was changed by someone and his trajectory is all messed up." The old man shook his head. Lin Xuanji asked again, "What about that black dog? Can you tell what race it is?" "It shouldn't be a dog," the old man frowned. "Duh, I know it's not a dog too." Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. "Old man, you can't tell its background even with your knowledge?" The old man narrowed his eyes and shook his head thoughtfully. "I can't say for sure. However, that black dog is truly not simple. I can sense a unique aura from it. It's very pure." "What aura?" "The aura of killing." The old man replied, "Although you've lost the chance to nurture a divine dragon this time round, if you can get your hands on that black dog, your future won't be too bad." Lin Xuanji rubbed his chin and his eyes darted around as he came up with an idea. As though he thought of something, the old man frowned in thought and murmured softly, "That girl." Along the way, Suzimo could sense that the little girl was following behind him. A long time later, Suzimo returned to his rented residence and stopped in his tracks, turning around. The little girl was caught off guard and a look of panic flashed through her eyes. Su Zimo strode towards the little girl. She seemed to be afraid and wanted to retreat. However, she held herself back. Why are you following me? Su Zimo approached and asked softly. This is the first time someone has given me clothes to wear. The little girl blinked her big watery eyes and said timidly. Su Zimo's heart softened and he asked, You don't have anywhere to go? The little girl nodded. All right, from today onwards you'll live here. Su Zimo pointed at the house behind him and said with a smile, But I'm only renting it for a year. I can only guarantee that you can stay there for a year. Thank you. A smile finally appeared on the little girl's face. Su Zimo brought the little girl into the house and asked casually, My name is Su Zimo. What's your name? Nianqi. The little girl's wariness towards Su Zimo had lessened a lot, and there was a trace of vitality in her voice. The house faced south with Jishui River at its back. It took up a large area and had many rooms. Nianqi found a random room and stayed there. Su Zimo headed out and bought some clothes and food for Nianqi, placing them in front of Nianqi's room. After doing that, Su Zimo came to the courtyard and took out a wooden plaque from his storage bag. Since he wanted to open a weapon workshop, he had to come up with a name. Looking at the night spirit patrolling the courtyard, Su Zimo smiled and muttered to himself, Let's call it Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop then. Using his finger as a sword, Su Zimo carved 5 words on the wooden plaque. Right then the door behind him opened with a creak. Su Zimo turned back and saw a young girl with snow-white skin standing at the door. She was slim and elegant with exquisite features and watery eyes. Although she was young, she was already extremely beautiful. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. After washing away the stains on Nianqi's face, it was as though he had turned into a different person. However, for some reason, Nianqi's hair was still yellow and curly like withered grass and tree branches. It did not have any luster and was incompatible with his fair face. Su Zimo did not think too much about it and merely thought that it was because Nianqi had suffered too much over the years and his body was weak. He would return to normal after recuperating for a year or so. Young master, what are you doing? Nianqi walked over and looked at the wooden plaque in Su Zimo's hands, murmuring softly, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop. Are you intending to open a weapon workshop here, young master? That's right, Su Zimo nodded. Nianqi's lips moved as though he wanted to say something but stopped. Speak if you have something to say. Su Zimo smiled. Nianqi said, Although I don't know how to refine weapons, I've been wandering around the city all these years. The place you're at is suitable for living but not for opening a weapon workshop. No one will come here. Cultivators who were familiar with the capital would definitely head to Yongqing City to customize spirit weapons, because all the weapon workshops in the capital were located on that street. As for cultivators who were not familiar with the capital, they would head to Yongqing City if they asked around. In Nianqi's opinion, no one would visit Su Zimo's weapon workshop here. Su Zimo was not worried at all as he smiled. My weapon workshop is different, don't worry. Nianqi nodded as though he understood. Su Zimo pointed to a chair at the side. Sit. Hold this stone and let me take a look. There was a stone the size of a baby's fist on the table. It was a spirit testing stone that Su Zimo had just bought. Nianqi reached out and held the spirit testing stone. After a while, there were no changes to the spirit testing stone. Su Zimo sighed internally. Initially, he still had a glimmer of hope that Nianqi might have a spirit root and could enter the path of cultivation. However, he knew in his heart that the possibility was extremely low. There were many perfected beings of Jindan in the capital, and there might even be Jining Jinjuan. If Nianqi had a spirit root, he would have been taken away and taken in as a disciple long ago. Now that there were no changes to the spirit testing stone, Su Zimo knew that Nianqi was the same as him. An ordinary person without a spirit root. As though realizing something, Nianqi said hurriedly, Young master, although I don't have a spirit root, I'm very strong and can help you with many things. Don't chase me away. It's fine. Su Zimo shook his head. Afraid that Nianqi would overthink, he changed the topic and asked, You said that you're very strong. How strong? Very, very strong. Nianqi blinked and said, Previously, I didn't dare to reveal it because I was afraid that others would lock me up as a monster. Su Zimo could not help but laugh. In Su Zimo's opinion, Nianqi was only boasting as much as possible so that she would not be chased away. She was just a little girl with thin arms and legs. How much strength could she possibly have? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Wanting to tease Nianqi, he took out the mystic gold silk armor from his storage bag and placed it gently on the table. This is a silk armor. Can you lift it up? Of course. Nianqi nodded naturally and tugged at the corner of the mystic gold silk armor with one hand, lifting it up. It did not budge at all. Nianqi was stunned for a moment. Su Zimo snickered internally, but his expression did not change. Nianqi stood up and frowned slightly. Looking at the mystic gold silk armor in disbelief, she lifted it with her other hand as well. When Su Zimo saw that Nianqi was about to try again, he waved it off, afraid that the joke would be too much. Forget it. Actually, this mystic gold silk armor weighs. Su Zimo's voice came to a stop as he bounced up from his chair, dumbfounded. Nianqi's arms were trembling and her cheeks were flushed. It was clear that she had used all her strength to lift the mystic gold silk armor off the table. Chapter 255. Even though Su Zimo seemed to be able to take out the mystic gold silk armor with a single hand with ease, the inner armor weighed at least 5,000 kilograms. Back then, Su Zimo was only able to pick up the mystic gold silk armor after he cultivated to lesser mastery of the marrow cleansing section. But now, a 14 or 15-year-old girl was able to do it. The way Su Zimo looked at Nianqi changed gradually. This was no longer as simple as strength. Given the strength displayed by Nianqi right now, she could even kill early-stage foundation establishment cultivators if she were to learn some killing techniques. Su Zimo's first reaction was that Nianqi had cultivated some sort of powerful body tempering technique. However, Su Zimo immediately denied that speculation. All body tempering techniques of the human race were built on the foundation of possessing a spirit root and cultivating spirit qi. However, there was no spirit qi in Nianqi's body at all. Strange, could there really be people born with divine strength? Su Zimo could not figure it out no matter how he thought about it. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo took out a thin booklet from his storage bag and handed it to Nianqi. This is the Qi condensation manual. Try cultivating it. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Even though Nianqi did not have a spirit root, Su Zimo still wanted her to give it a try. Nianqi nodded. Standing up, Su Zimo hung the signboard with the words Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop on the beam outside the residence. Young master, if there's anything you need me to do, feel free to instruct me. Nianqi was a sensible person. She did not want to freeload here and wanted to do something as well. Sensing Nianqi's intentions, Su Zimo pondered for a moment before saying, just take care of the customers in the future and inform me of their requests. What's the price? Nianqi asked. Su Zimo replied, for now, we're only going to order middle-grade spirit weapons. 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones and a set of materials will do. Nianqi's eyes widened. She had been in the capital for a long time and was familiar with some things in Yongxing City. The price set by Su Zimo was the lowest price for middle-grade spirit weapons. Most importantly, they only had to prepare a set of materials. Normally, to refine middle-grade spirit weapons required at least 3 sets of materials. Some weapon workshops even required 4 sets of materials. Just like what the true fire sect disciple had said, no Qi refinement warrior could have a 100% success rate in spirit gathering. That was why True Fire Weapon Workshop allowed the cultivators to prepare 3 sets of materials just in case. Refining a high-grade spirit artifact had a higher probability of failure, so the cultivator had to prepare 10 sets of materials. However, Su Zimo did not have to worry about that at all. This was because the most difficult part of the refining process, spirit gathering, was not a problem for him at all. With his spirit perception, Su Zimo had a 100% success rate in spirit gathering. Right now, the only obstacle in front of Su Zimo was tempering. What Su Zimo wanted to practice was how to remove more impurities and make the spirit weapon tougher so that it could withstand more spirit patterns. Young master, although I don't know much about weapon refinement, I've heard that it's impossible to succeed 100%. If there's only 1 set of materials and it fails, we'll have to purchase them ourselves. That's a waste of time and effort and it's not worth it. Nianqi persuaded Su Zimo carefully. It's fine, just do as I say, Su Zimo smiled. For the next month, Su Zimo's life was on the right track. From morning to noon, Su Zimo chose to cultivate ethereal foundation establishment to raise his cultivation realm. After the battle at Dongling Valley and the thousands of miles of escape, Su Zimo's cultivation realm had loosened and he would be able to advance to late-stage foundation establishment within half a year. In the afternoon, Su Zimo focused all his attention on weapon refinement. As he recalled the images left behind by Hakuo Dojin, he compared them to the ancient tempering book and refined weapons. Su Zimo could initially refine inferior-grade spirit weapons. After a month, he made a breakthrough in tempering and could already refine middle-grade spirit weapons. However, if he wanted to condense 3 spirit patterns and refine superior-grade spirit weapons, he had to continue practicing and remove as many impurities as possible. This required a lot of hard work. There was no possibility of taking advantage of any shortcuts. At night, Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, and tried his best to absorb and refine the essence energy of the dragon egg in his body, fusing it into his body completely. It was the same for Night Spirit, seemingly lying motionlessly at Su Zimo's feet. In reality, it was also refining the essence energy of the dragon egg in its body. The growth of Night Spirit's body was clearly much faster than before. A month later, Su Zimo's robes could no longer contain it. The surface of Night Spirit's body was getting rougher and black. Tough armor was starting to grow on it, just like the scales of a divine dragon. At the end of Night Spirit's tail, an extremely sharp spike grew that was not any weaker than his claws. Night Spirit was getting more extraordinary, and the ferocious glint in its eyes from time to time sent chills down Su Zimo's spine. During this period of time, Nian Qi's body changed the most. After cultivating qi condensation, Nian Qi could truly sense spirit qi. Furthermore, in less than 2 hours, Nian Qi was at level 1 qi condensation. This speed was even faster than Su Zimo's back then. He was born with divine strength and could sense spirit qi despite not having a spirit root. Everything that happened to Nian Qi was extremely mysterious and inexplicable. Nian Qi was extremely anxious as no cultivators visited the weapon workshop after it opened for a month. However, Su Zimo did not seem to care about that at all as he continued with his immortal cultivation, weapon refinement and demonic cultivation in an orderly manner. This day, someone knocked on the door of his residence for the first time. Su Zimo opened his eyes and heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he appeared calm for the past month, he was somewhat anxious internally. He did not have many spirit stones left in his storage bag. If there were no more customers, he would not be able to replenish the spirit stones required for his daily cultivation. Nian Qi had already rushed out excitedly and opened the door with a smile. "Welcome to Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Fellow Taoist, please come in." Nian Qi was extremely beautiful to begin with. Now that he was smiling, it was even more mesmerizing. The person at the door froze on the spot. Blinking, Nian Qi probed, "Fellow Taoist, are you here for a custom-made spirit weapon?" "Ah." The person at the door snapped back to his senses and frowned. Opening his palms, he deduced repeatedly and muttered to himself, "Could I have gone to the wrong place? Why is there a woman here?" Right then, Su Zimo walked out of his room. When he saw who it was, he could not help but be disappointed. The person was dressed in gray robes and was slightly plump. His face was pale without any facial hair, and he held a folding fan in his hand. It was not a customer here for a custom-made spirit weapon, but Lin Xuanji. "Nian Qi, come on back," Su Zimo called out. When Lin Xuanji heard Su Zimo's voice, his eyes lit up as he entered the residence and greeted warmly, "Brother Zimo, long time no see." Su Zimo felt a chill run down his spine when he heard that. Prior to this, Lin Xuanji could not wait to tear him apart. When did he become so friendly? There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. Chapter 256. After Lin Xuanji entered the courtyard, a black shadow flashed behind him. A menacing demon beast stood at the entrance of the residence. Its eyes were bloodshot and its body was covered in thick, pitch-black fur. Its limbs were muscular and it was tall and mighty, exuding a savage and malevolent aura. It was a Foundation Establishment spirit demon, an ancient remnant beast, the Phantom Hound. The Phantom Hound was extremely ferocious. No matter who it was, They would not rest until they were dead once they set their sights on them. Even in the ancient era, there were very few demon beasts or cultivators who were willing to provoke them. When he caught sight of such a demon beast, Nianqi exclaimed and retreated instinctively. Roar! Nianqi's reaction attracted the attention of the phantom hound. The phantom hound stuck its head out and glared at Nianqi with bloodshot eyes. Opening its mouth slightly, it let out a deep growl from the depths of its throat. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Night Spirit, who was initially sprawled beside Su Zimo's feet, opened its eyes and glared at the phantom hound coldly before closing its eyes to rest. Lin Xuanji turned back and hollered. The phantom hound calmed down gradually. Lin Xuanji coughed gently. This is a spirit demon that I just got. Not bad, huh? Su Zimo smiled and did not say anything. Lass, you're not bad either. You're Nianqi, right? Lin Xuanji pointed to Nianqi, who was standing behind Su Zimo, and added. Su Zimo remained silent and looked at Lin Xuanji with a fake smile. Lin Xuanji was clearly busy but was avoiding the topic. After a while, Lin Xuanji finally could not hold it in and revealed his foxtail. Looking at Night Spirit, he pretended to be surprised and said, a Night Spirit has grown so big. I almost couldn't recognize it. Su Zimo smiled. Brother Lin, what's the matter? Just say it. It's nothing. Look at how big Night Spirit has grown. I'm just looking for a playmate for him. Lin Xuanji beckoned to the phantom hound behind him and said, Look, this spirit demon of mine is mighty and extraordinary. Furthermore, it's a female. It's so compatible with the Night Spirit. When Nianqi heard this, his cheeks turned red and he spat softly. Su Zimo finally understood what Lin Xuanji was up to. This time, he actually planned to use his beauty to kidnap Night Spirit. Lin Xuanji brought the ghostly spirit dog in front of him and pointed in the direction of the Night Spirit, saying, Go, you two, get closer. When Su Zimo saw this, he did not stop them. The body of the Night Spirit was much smaller than that of the tormented spirit hound. The ghost hound walked in front of Night Spirit and looked down at Night Spirit from above. It let out a low growl, warning Night Spirit not to act rashly. Thereafter, the ghost hound lowered its head and sniffed the body of the Night Spirit. Right then, the Night Spirit suddenly opened its eyes. A cold glint flashed. Night Spirit extended a pair of sharp claws and dug them into the body of the ghost hound. At the same time, it opened its mouth and bit down on the throat of the ghost hound with lightning speed. Suddenly, the courtyard went silent. Snap! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. The throat of the ghost hound was bitten off by the Night Spirit and fresh blood gushed out, staining the ground red. The entire process happened too quickly. It was not only the ghost hound. Even Su Zimo and Lin Xuanji could not react in time. The ghost hound's body twitched, but it was powerless to resist. Its eyes dimmed and its life force drained rapidly. It could no longer survive. This was an unsolvable hunt. There were no unnecessary movements in Night Spirit's attack. It was clean and precise, and his timing was impeccable as well. F***CK. Lin Xuanji jumped up. In order to abduct the Night Spirit, Lin Xuanji racked his brains and expended a Herculean effort to obtain this ghost hound. Who would have thought that it would be bitten to death by the Night Spirit the moment it arrived? At that moment, Lin Xuanji even had the urge to die. You evil dog, Lin Xuanji was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Raising his folding fan, he pointed it at Night Spirit's nose and was about to curse. Raising its head, the Night Spirit bit down on Lin Xuanji's folding fan once more and tore at it. Caught off guard, Lin Xuanji nearly dropped his folding fan. Hey! Why, evil dog, let go! Lin Xuanji was so angry that his nose was crooked. The Night Spirit did not want to bite anything else but his folding fan. Lin Xuanji could throw away anything but this folding fan. Right then, a voice sounded from the entrance of the courtyard. May I know if I can customize middle-grade spirit weapons here? A Foundation establishment cultivator stood at the entrance and stuck his head in to ask with a doubtful tone. Of course, Nianqi was the first to react as he hurried forward with a smile. Fellow Taoist, please come in. Su Zimo patted Night Spirit. The Night Spirit let go and no longer bothered with Lin Xuanji. Turning to leave, it sprawled on the ground not far away and closed its eyes to cultivate lazily. Lin Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief. I couldn't tell that you know how to refine weapons as well? Lin Xuanji glanced at Su Zimo from the corner of his eyes. Su Zimo smiled without saying anything. Nian Qi asked, "How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" Tanfei. Nian Qi asked again. "What kind of middle-grade spirit weapon do you want customized?" Tanfei had an uneasy expression. "I don't have much materials and only prepared 2 sets. I wonder." "There's no need, 1 set is enough," Nian Qi smiled. "Huh. Ah." Both Tanfei and Lin Xuanji were stunned with their mouths agape, unable to react for a moment. One set of materials? Tanfei seemed to be in disbelief. He looked at Nian Qi and repeated his question. Nian Qi hesitated as well as he looked at Su Zimo. When he saw Su Zimo nod slightly, Nian Qi made up his mind and nodded vigorously. "That's right, 1 set of materials. Hey, do you know how to refine weapons or not?" Lin Xuanji leaned over and asked softly. Su Zimo chuckled. "I know a little." "What the F***ck do you know?" Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. "Throughout history, I've never heard of any weapon refinement master who dares to customize a spirit weapon for a single set of materials." Su Zimo replied. "You'll be able to see it very soon." Lin Xuanji. Tanfei asked carefully, "How do you charge then?" "It's too expensive and I can't afford it." "It's not expensive, just 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones." Nian Qi stated the price according to the initial rules. "Just 3,000? There's no fluctuation?" Tanfei was in disbelief. Coughing gently, Tanfei said, "I'd better state my request. I want a custom-made hiltless saber that's 2 feet long, 2 fingers wide and weighs around 100 kilograms. After saying a lot, Tanfei took a deep breath and asked embarrassedly, "Is it still 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones?" To be fair, he had already visited all the weapon workshops in Monarch City before coming here. He heard that he only prepared 2 sets of materials and none of the weapon workshops were willing to accept the deal. Furthermore, according to his description, this middle-grade spiritual weapon was worth at least 4,000 middle-grade spiritual stones. If not for that, Tanfei would not have come here. 3,000 it is. Nian Qi was certain this time round. However, Tanfei was hesitant. He only needed 1 set of materials, and the custom-made price was so low. He was taking advantage of it, so he was really worried. Lin Xuanji watched the commotion with a smile, waiting to see Su Zimo make a fool of himself. Chapter 257. For a long time, Tanfei could not make up his mind. "I know that you have your concerns, right then," Su Zimo spoke. "How about this? Give me the materials first. If you succeed in refining the spirit weapon, you'll pay me 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones. If you fail, I'll compensate you with all the spirit stones the materials are worth." When he heard that, Tanfei's eyes lit up. Tanfei asked, "How many days do I have to wait?" Su Zimo replied indifferently, "There's no need. Just wait here. The middle-grade spirit weapon will be ready in a while." Ah! Tanfei was stunned. Lin Xuanji was stunned as well. Just how much confidence did he have to be able to say such words? "Alright then, the materials for refining the spirit weapon are all in this storage bag." Tanfei decided to give it a try right here. Receiving the storage bag, Su Zimo took a look inside and had an idea of what was going on. Su Zimo did not return to his room. Instead, he took out his weapon tripod and intended to refine the middle-grade spirit weapon right in front of the 3 of them in the courtyard. For this first business deal, he had to reveal some extreme methods in order to attract more cultivators. Swoosh! A level 3 spirit fire appeared in his palm and began to roast the weapon tripod. When he saw the scarlet level 3 spirit fire, Tanfei's confidence increased once more. Warming the tripod, smelting, molding. Even though the 3 of them were not weapon refinement masters, they could tell that Su Zimo's technique was not rusty at all, as though he had practiced it countless times. As they watched Su Zimo refine the weapon, the 3 of them felt a sense of amazement in their hearts. "He's got some skills," Lin Xuanji muttered. Nian Qi gripped his fists instinctively. He was even more nervous than Su Zimo. 4th step, tempering. A series of clinking sounds came from the weapon tripod. It was crisp and pleasing to the ears without any mess. Su Zimo did not completely copy the tempering technique in the book. Instead, he combined it with the image left behind by Hakura Dojin and created his own unique set of Thousand Hammer Finger technique. This set of Thousand Hammer Finger technique, Suzimo was still in the exploration stage and had not perfected it to the large success stage. Although the situation of removing impurities was not ideal, it was much better than before. At least he could condense a tool embryo that could withstand 2 spiritual inscriptions. Not long after, the tempering ended. 5th step, spirit gathering. Even though Lin Xuanji and the other 2 did not know much about weapon refinement, they knew that spirit gathering was the most crucial step in weapon refinement. Whether or not he could forge a middle-grade spirit weapon depended on whether he could successfully condense 2 spirit inscriptions. The 3 of them held their breaths and stared with rapt attention. But in the next moment, Suzimo did something that scared the 3 of them half to death. Suzimo suddenly took away the weapon refining cauldron, and without the protection of the weapon refining cauldron, he started to condense spirit marks. F*CK. Lin Xuanji was the first to react as he retreated. In reality, given his cultivation realm, even if the spirit gathering failed and the tool embryo exploded, he would not be hurt. However, it would be embarrassing if he ended up in a wretched state. Tan Fei froze for a moment before following suit and running. It was only when he reached the entrance that he turned around and hid behind it, watching the situation from afar. Nian Qi moved. She wanted to leave as well, but she was a little embarrassed. Afraid that Suzimo would be embarrassed, she could only stand still on the spot. Whoosh! Right then a bright light shone in front of Suzimo. On the blade-shaped weapon embryo, there was actually a spirit pattern flashing. He succeeded in condensing the first spirit pattern? Lin Xuanji's eyes widened and his jaw almost dropped to the ground as he lamented internally. That works too. Time passed bit by bit, as though it was an extremely long time. Suzimo was still attempting to condense the second spirit pattern. At times he would stop suddenly and condense it again, repeating the process repeatedly. Even though he could not condense the second spirit pattern, however, the situation that the 3 of them were worried about did not happen. All of a sudden, just as the 3 of them were letting their imaginations run wild, another spirit light flashed in the courtyard. The second spirit pattern was condensed. Delighted, Tan Fei sprinted back hurriedly. Suzimo let out a long breath of turbid air and soaked the saber in cold water, quenching it into shape. Tan Fei received the saber with both hands and fell in love with it the more he looked at it. The saber was almost identical to what he had requested. It had a dark black body and was streamlined. The blade was sharp and could slice through metal like mud. Fellow Taoist, this is your reward. Take it. Tan Fei took out a storage pouch and handed it to Suzimo. Opening it, Suzimo took a look and was slightly stunned. 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones is enough. That's too much. It's only right. Tan Fei said hurriedly, fellow Taoist, you only used a single set of materials to create a middle-grade spirit weapon. You saved me a lot of spirit stones and materials as well. This is what you deserve. Suzimo did not decline and accepted it. Patting his chest, Tan Fei said, fellow Taoist, don't worry. A weapon refinement standard like yours shouldn't be buried. I'll definitely help you publicize it when I get back. Suzimo smiled. Thank you very much. Tan Fei left the place happily. Before he left, he even muttered, godly, godly. Lin Xuanji said with lingering fear, no matter what, you're the first person who dared to remove the weapon tripod during spirit gathering. My horizons have truly been broadened. Suzimo turned to Nian Qi and said, there's another rule in our weapon workshop. We'll only refine weapons in the afternoon and ignore anyone who comes at any other time. That's not very appropriate, right? Nian Qi hesitated. After all, it's the first time for many cultivators and they don't know about our rules. It's fine. You'll know after a few more visits. Suzimo smiled. In the future, we'll have many more rules. Actually, be it in terms of price or materials, Suzimo's weapon workshop was far lower than other weapon workshops. He merely lacked an opportunity. But now that opportunity had appeared, Tan Fei. Suzimo believed that it wouldn't be long before most spirit weapon workshops spread to every corner of the capital and many cultivators would know about it, causing its reputation to soar. There were people refining weapons daily in the capital. The weapon refinement world of the capital was calm as well. However, Su Zimo's actions today were like a stone that fell into a lake, creating ripples on the calm surface of the capital. Have you heard? A new weapon workshop opened by the Jishui River. Seems like there are many strange rules. Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop? I know about it. I heard that this weapon refinement master called Mo Ling has a weird temper and only refines weapons in the afternoon. Furthermore, he can take them away on the same day he refines them. Most importantly, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop only requires one set of materials, and the price is only 3,000 spirit stones. What a nice weapon workshop. I intend to check it out tomorrow. Why don't we go together? Count me in. Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop seemed to have appeared out of nowhere overnight as its influence expanded continuously, becoming a topic of discussion among cultivators. Chapter 258. News of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop spread to Yongqing City before long, causing quite a stir. There was no cultivator who wouldn't be tempted as long as they prepared a set of materials at the lowest price. Initially, there were some cultivators who did not believe it and were still used to customizing spirit weapons at Yongqing City. However, as time passed by, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop's reputation grew, and so did its influence. Some cultivators would rather queue at Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop than spend more materials and money at Yongqing City. What? He dares to refine weapons with just a set of materials? And the price is so low? He's not afraid of losing money. Which sect is this Mo Ling from? How old is he? The cultivators in the capital all thought that the weapon refinement master of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop was called Mo Ling. I'm not sure. I heard that the one receiving the cultivators is a 14 or 15-year-old girl. I've never heard of anyone seeing Mo Ling's appearance. Yes, there are different versions of Mo Ling's appearance and age. Some say that he's a frail scholar, some say that he's an immortal, and some say that he's an old man. I don't think any of them are accurate. However, I heard that the girl is extremely beautiful, and there's even a black dog in the house that's rather fierce. The various weapon workshops began to discuss this matter as well. Back hall of True Fire Weapon Workshop. An old man in scarlet robes leaned back on a chair, listening to the shopkeeper's description of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop while sipping his tea with an indifferent expression. Elder Lu, because of Mo Ling, the number of middle-grade spirit weapons custom-made in our weapon workshop has decreased significantly. Do you think? Gu Yong probed. Although Gu Yong was the shopkeeper of True Fire Weapon Workshop, he was only a foundation establishment cultivator, and was proficient in the ways of the merchant. However, Elder Lu was the pillar of support for True Fire Weapon Workshop. Elder Lu was a high-level weapon refinement master, and was famous in the True Fire sect. Most of the cultivators who came to True Fire Weapon Workshop to customize superior-grade spirit weapons came because of Elder Lu's reputation. 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones for a single set of materials? Elder Lu shook his head and chuckled. You're really asking for trouble. Even advanced weapon refinement masters can't guarantee a 100% success rate of spirit gathering. Those who can achieve a success rate of 50% are already considered top-tier weapon refinement masters. In other words, if I want to earn 3,000 spirit stones, I need to prepare at least 2 sets of materials. Given how arrogant this person is, I can guarantee that within half a year, this Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop will definitely not be able to continue operating and will close down. Gu Yong asked, then we don't need to pay attention to him? Yes. Elder Lu nodded his head. True Fire Weapon Workshop's main source of income is customizing superior-grade spirit weapons. Mo Ling can only customize middle-grade spirit weapons. Even though it has an impact on us, it's not too great. Pausing for a moment, Elder Lu's eyes flashed with a trace of mockery as he sneered. Let him fend for himself. I want to see how this person ends up. Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop's business was getting better, and there was an endless stream of cultivators visiting every day. Every day, it was Nian Qi who received the visiting cultivators. Su Zimo didn't show up. He stayed in his room and used the materials that were delivered to him to refine and perfect his tempering technique. With the passage of time, Su Zimo's refining skills steadily improved, becoming more and more exquisite. His tempering technique was also being perfected bit by bit. With a sizable income of spirit stones every day, Su Zimo and Nian Qi's problem of cultivation resources was resolved as well. Half a year passed by in the blink of an eye. The 2 men and 1 beast of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop had quite a bit of gains. With sufficient spirit stone resources, Su Zimo had already successfully advanced to late-stage foundation establishment 2 months ago. As for Nian Qi, he had actually reached level 7 Qi condensation after half a year of cultivation. That cultivation speed was not inferior to Su Zimo's back then. The night spirit had grown a little more as well. It was clear that the essence energy of the dragon egg had a huge effect on the growth of the night spirit as well. During this period of time, Lin Xuanji had tried dozens of methods to kidnap the night spirit. However, all of them ended in failure and he ended up dejected each time. Half a year later, Lin Xuanji finally couldn't take it anymore and bade farewell. This day Su Zimo called Nian Qi over. Yes. The rules of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop have to be changed. What rules? Nian Qi was not surprised. She was already used to it after half a year and was not surprised. She could guarantee that Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop had the most strange rules among all the weapon workshops in the capital. However, business was the best, Su Zimo said. From tomorrow onwards, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop will no longer refine middle-grade spirit weapons. We'll only refine superior-grade spirit weapons. Ah! Nian Qi's mouth opened slightly with a stunned expression, unable to believe her ears. And no more middle-grade spirit weapons? Only superior-grade spirit weapons? After saying that, even Nian Qi was shocked. Su Zimo nodded. That's right, it's still a set of materials. However, you'll need 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Seeing that Su Zimo did not seem like he was joking, Nian Qi nodded instinctively. By the time she reacted, Su Zimo had already turned and left. For the past half a year, all the cultivators in the capital knew that the weapon refinement master named Mo Spirit had a strange personality, and would only refine weapons in the afternoon. Once 6 hours passed, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop would close no matter how many people were queuing outside. That afternoon, a large group of cultivators gathered outside Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop. They were densely packed and raised their heads in anticipation. Before long, the doors opened with a creak, revealing a peerlessly beautiful face. The cultivators who had been waiting outside for a long time were invigorated as they bounced up from their spots, one faster than the other. However, when they arrived at the entrance, everyone stopped in their tracks and did not dare to take a single step past the door. Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop had too many rules. Anyone who stepped through the doors without the permission of the owner would be disqualified from customizing spirit weapons in Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop. Initially, there were some cultivators who were unhappy. Although they did not dare to fight within the capital, they barged into the residence and caused a ruckus. In the end, they were bitten half to death by a huge black dog. Miss Nian Qi, look here. Look here. It's me. I'm Yuing Jun. Miss Nian Qi, I've been here for 3 days now. It should be my turn now, right? Get lost. I've been waiting here for a month. The crowd was crowded and noisy, huddling together at the entrance, but no one dared to take half a step forward. Nian Qi hesitated for a moment before saying slowly, fellow Taoists, from today onwards, Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop will no longer refine middle-grade spirit weapons. Huh? What? No more. The crowd gradually calmed down with confused expressions. Nian Qi continued, from now on, this place will only refine superior-grade spirit weapons. Yes, it's still a set of materials, but you'll need 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Why? Miss Nian Qi, that's not right. We're all here, why aren't you refining anymore? That's right. We want to meet fellow Taoist Mo Ling and make things clear. Many cultivators were indignant and protested loudly. Nian Qi stuck out her tongue and said, I forgot to tell everyone that my young master is in a bad mood today and won't be refining weapons. Everyone, you won't be able to meet him either. Please leave. With that said, Nian Qi closed the doors, leaving the messy crowd in a daze for a long time. A moment later, a cultivator pointed at the door with a trembling body and grit his teeth. She's too damn willful.